Chapter 1239. He stayed in the laboratory for about an afternoon and saw with his own eyes the 5 photocatalysts he had invented himself. These 5 finished products were now stored in dozens of safes in the underground warehouse of the research institute. There were also extremely high-level security guards patrolling outside to prevent them from being stolen. On the other side, the metal carriers for the 5 finished catalysts were also being produced in full swing. The 5 pretreatment pools of Tongshan factory had long been built, and they were just waiting for the carriers coated with the new catalyst to be thrown into the pools. As for Zhuo Jingxi and the others, their current work included continuing to supervise the production of the customized equipment, perfecting and accepting the technical improvements of Tongshan factory, and perfecting and verifying the actual treatment effect of the new photocatalyst formula on the 5 kinds of ultra-difficult wastewater in the laboratory. Although everyone already knew the results, the popularization of every new process and new product often had to go through several processes: theoretical perfection, small-scale research, pilot verification, and industrial application verification. This wasn't superfluous but a very rigorous scientific process. Chen Guang didn't understand this before and he didn't care about it. These were all formulas he had used as a cheat. Although he was 100% sure of the effect, others might not think so. First, he would do a verification in the laboratory. This was the first time he had done it for others to see, and then he would do it again on the spot. There was no doubt about the conclusion. When he left, he wanted to ask Teacher Zhuo out for a heart-to-heart talk in the evening, but she gave up on the idea on the spot. She said that she wouldn't leave until there were results in the laboratory. Now that the newly established Dawn Research Institute had recruited a lot of new employees, she didn't trust them. The Dawn Research Institute had hired quite professional security guards, and many of them had been borrowed from the military through their connections with the Chinese Academy of Sciences. At the very least, they were all professional Special Forces soldiers. In fact, these Special Forces soldiers also faced a situation where they could choose not to transfer. Their years of service had long exceeded the normal length of military service. According to the law, they could already choose to receive a large sum of money to return to ordinary life. However, these elites usually chose to continue serving because of the needs of the country and their personal patriotism. With their individual combat ability, it was easy for them to be promoted to the rank of sergeant, but there were all kinds of difficulties if they wanted to go further. They really weren't willing to be responsible for security for a private company. They couldn't afford to lose face. This time, the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the higher-ups of the military had both made an appearance. It was said that they were responsible for the security of Chen Guang's core industries. At the same time, although they had changed positions, they were still paid. They really managed to pull in a lot of experts from the military. With the capabilities of these people, Chen Guang felt that this side was quite reliable and there was no need to worry at all. Unfortunately, Zhuo Jingxi did not think so, so he could only run away with his tail between his legs. After busying himself outside for 2 whole days, it was rare for him to return to his house in the district outside Wujing University. Although he had become a millionaire, as the saying goes, no gold or silver nest can compare to your own kennel. It didn't matter if the house wasn't big as long as it was comfortable. That was why he was so angry when his parents blew up the villa that Lilai's parents had painstakingly built. His anger reached its peak when he returned and saw that the room that was meant for him was gone. Now that he was alone in a room, he felt a little lonely. He thought that he might as well go back to school to stay. Otherwise, it would be too miserable to stay here alone. There wasn't even someone to brag to. In any case, school was about to start soon. In any case, he could wash his hands of all the company's matters. In any case, there was no difference whether he cared about the players' matters or not. When the next cup realm came, he could pull himself into the game. Wouldn't everything be clear then? S-rank player? As he crossed his legs and fiddled with the computer in front of him, Chen Guang pondered over this explanation. Although others often used this to describe him, he actually didn't know how the so-called S-rank was classified. No one would believe him if he said it. As his mind wandered, he casually fiddled with the mouse on the computer, looking around. He was still far from knowing the information related to the entire world's environment. Things that seemed like common sense in the eyes of others were the accumulated knowledge of many people over a decade or two. It might seem simple, but it was definitely not something that could be done in 3 days to memorize everything and not conflict with the old world's common sense system in his mind when communicating with others. For example, China's current GDP was nearly twice that of the United States. This completely conflicted with the impression in Chen Guang's mind. It was so conflicting that he almost couldn't change it. Therefore, when Chen Guang chatted with others, he was actually very careful, afraid that he would slip up and make things awkward. After browsing the news for a while, he felt a little annoyed. Watching the news with a purpose was completely different from taking out his phone to browse when he had nothing to do. He clicked on the entertainment news to change his train of thought and rest his brain. He happened to see Jin Shirui and Jiang Yage's names on the headlines. Women swept the global box office. Of course, Qin Guang wasn't the only one who became popular. The other main leads in the film, Ren Chong, Zhouya, Zhao Yueling and the others, had their salaries and net worth soar. In just 3 to 4 months, they had at least received several high-paying contracts. As for Jin Shirui and Jiang Yage, who were already extremely popular, there was no need to mention them. No matter how powerful Chinese entertainment was in the New World, the natural barrier between Chinese and English in the entertainment culture was inevitable. Although Hollywood in the New World wasn't as powerful as in the Old World, it at least occupied half of the world's market with Chinese films. Furthermore, most of the time, the two sides didn't overlap. After this battle, the left and right-hand duo could be considered to have completely broken through the barrier between the two major language families and made a name for themselves in the English-speaking area. Although the two of them performed rather mediocre in scenes without Qin Guang, as long as Qin Guang appeared or filmed scenes with others on set, it would definitely be worth the price of the ticket. As for the news that Qin Guang saw now, it was that the two of them planned to follow up on their victory and release an all-English album. Although the two of them had been child stars since they were young and could only be said to be at the level of an ordinary person in cultural classes, they benefited from the fact that they had gone abroad early to further their studies at the Tchaikovsky Academy of Music and other prestigious academies, so their spoken English was pretty good. In the past half a year, because of Qin Guang's participation in the world language competition, Jiang Yage and Jin Shirui, who had evil intentions, took the initiative to cram in their spoken English. Now was the time to record an all-English album, so that people wouldn't feel like they were salt and pepper when they sang it. Looking at Jiang Yage's beautiful photos in the news, Qin Guang's mind couldn't help but think of some inappropriate scenes. He turned on his phone, but it was a pity that he didn't know when his previous inventory had been emptied. It was quite a pity. Qin Guang decided to find a sufficient reason for himself. That's right, in order to provide samples for the Great Life Sciences Research Institute, I can't be so selfish. I should take the initiative to sacrifice and contribute. Also, seeing that the two of them are still in the mood to think about the new album, it seems that they aren't sure if the two of them have become players. Now that I've come out of seclusion, it's reasonable for me to take the initiative to care about them. Therefore he picked up his phone and decisively called Jiang Yage. Chapter 1240. In fact, it was already quite late at night, and it was quite impolite to call others. However, Qin Guang was a little bit brainless and the other party was Jiang Yage, so he had less scruples. He didn't expect Jiang Yage to hang up on him first. While Qin Guang was confused, Jiang Yage directly opened his WeChat video call. After the video connection, what appeared in front of Qin Guang's eyes was a magnificently decorated hall. He didn't know which luxurious hotel room Jiang Yage was in at the moment. Celebrities were often like this. They couldn't go back to their homes all year round, and most of their lives were spent in hotels or flying around on planes. Although Jin Jiang and Qin Haodong were now superstars with extraordinary backgrounds, to be celebrities, these things had to be done eventually. Otherwise, the audience and fans would often forget them in the fastest speed. After waiting for a few seconds, Jiang Yage appeared in the camera. At this time she was sitting in front of a piano in pajamas. Her fingers danced nimbly on the keys, and the beautiful notes fluttered through the video signal, adding to her charm at this time. "You're finally willing to call me. I thought you'd forgotten about us." Jiang Yage stopped, turned sideways and turned to look at the camera. She said very mischievously. Being looked at by her rather pure gaze, Qin Guang suddenly felt a little ashamed in his heart. He was completely embarrassed to expose his previous crooked thoughts, so he coughed lightly and said, "It's nothing special. I just saw that you're about to release a new album, so I called to show my concern." "Oh." Jiang Yage chuckled and looked as if she had already seen through him. "Hee, I'm afraid it's not that simple, right? How could I not know you?" In fact, she was very happy at this moment. She had known this guy for so long and she had always been the one to take the initiative. This guy had always been stubborn. Sometimes, even if his mind was full of distracting thoughts, he would still hide them in front of her. He was quite wretched and shameless. Today he took the initiative to call her in the middle of the night. How could he not be dirty? "Oh right, have you seen my new variety show?" Qin Guang didn't know what was on Jiang Yage's mind at this time. He changed the topic to Haishin with only one purpose, to test her. Jiang Yage rolled her eyes, feeling a little disappointed. However, she immediately collected her thoughts and put on a serious expression. You want to ask me if I'm a player, right? Well, I already know the answer. As soon as she opened her mouth, Qin Guang knew whether or not it was true. The two of them chatted for a while, and as expected, what was the saying again? When the nest is overturned, no eggs can remain intact. Their relationship with Qin Guang was extremely deep, and they were also deeply implicated by this fellow. Coupled with the fact that Jin Jiang and Jin Jin were extremely talented, it was simply inevitable that they would be dragged into this mess. These two people's abilities were also quite impressive. They were called soul singers, which sounded like a curse but actually had a deeper meaning. The effect of the so-called soul singers was similar to that of the warsong shaman. In the game they could use their voices to buff their enemies or buff their teammates. This seemed a little similar to playing the piano, but in fact it was not. The talent level of the soul singers was obviously a level higher than that of the pianist. At the same level, the weakening and buff effects of the soul singers were much stronger than that of the pianist. More importantly, they didn't need any equipment. They only needed to use their voices, and they could sing whenever they felt that something was wrong. They could sing to the point where one Buddha was born and two Buddhas ascended to heaven at any time. However, Jin Shirui and Jiang Yage were very dissatisfied with this. In their hearts, music was something that could bring joy to people. How could they sing to the point where others would run away like rats? Moreover, their singing was not bad, so wouldn't it be embarrassing? Fortunately, apart from the initial talent of being a soul singer, the two of them each had a second talent. Unlike Jiang Yage, who only focused on strengthening her piano skills after meeting Qin Guang, Jin Shirui had been a genius when it came to musical instruments since a young age. In addition, she was diligent and inquisitive. Whenever she had the chance, she would practice hard. In fact, her piano skills were definitely at the level of a master. However, due to her status as a celebrity in her young age, she had never held any special concerts. The impression that others had of her was that of a celebrity with both acting and singing skills. She had never been regarded as a master pianist. It was only in the game that her talent was recognized by the system, which had seen through its essence. A soul singer with a single skill was already very powerful. Now that she could combine playing and singing, her power increased to a whole new level. Although she was only a D rank now, she could already be considered a C rank powerful support. As for Jiang Yage's second talent, it was even more strange. It was actually car racing. Qin Guang guessed that it might have something to do with her chasing him in a car on Fengquan Mountain. In short, the two of them really formed the strange combination that Qin Guang had once imagined, the legendary caravan soul singer girls group. Others could not catch up to them and they could not hit them. Jiang Yage drove the caravan that she had exchanged her reward points while shouting from the driver's seat. She was responsible for the super negative buff. Jin Shirui was responsible for playing the piano in the caravan, adding buffs to her own people. That was not all. Although the two of them had changed their appearances in the game, others did not know that they were a left-hand and right-hand duo. However, it still could not stop their celebrity temperament, and it even strengthened them to a considerable extent. Every time the two of them entered the mission space, they were able to quickly form teams, big or small. So far, in the 5 missions they had experienced, almost every time the teams formed by the two of them could become the mainstay of the humans in each independent space. Qin Guang even felt that the two of them might enjoy the fun of the game more than him. I'm convinced. That's good, then I don't have to worry about you so much. Qin Guang laughed and then prepared to forcibly cut off the video. Hey, wait. What's the matter? In order to cover up his evil intentions, Qin Guang deliberately pinched a very stern expression. When can you come to Yanjing? In a few days, Sister Shirui and I will go to Europe. Since we are going to release an English album, we have to properly promote it. Now that you are our boss, shouldn't you come and support us? We will make money for you in the future. Jiang Yage said while blinking, which was very meaningful. Only then did Qin Guang realize that he had nearly forgotten that the two of them were artists under him. He thought about it and said, Is that so? I think it's better for you to go out after a while. You can come to Wujing first. Are you serious? What's the matter? Jiang Yage tilted her head and looked at him. Qin Guang nodded. That's my plan. It seems that a lot of people have been involved because of me. I think I should call everyone together and communicate with each other. At this point, he didn't care about the accident or the charaba anymore. The whole world was different now. Everyone's fate had changed. If the accident happened, then so be it. As long as he could gather everyone together into a team, and with the support of Heaven's resources, Qin Guang felt that he might be able to build a team that could rival Yu Ting's team before the next game mission. No matter how strong he was still just one person. He couldn't take care of everything. There would always be things that he couldn't take care of. I will first make myself the strongest player, then build the strongest team. Only then can I truly boost my confidence. I have to let all the players know that not only am I strong, I can also make others strong. Just as he was thinking about this, his phone suddenly rang. He picked it up and saw that it was a message from Tang Ying. Where's the sample? Tang Ying was rushing the goods again. Can we not be arrogant? Can you come and get it yourself? Qin Guang replied decisively. Chapter 1241. In the end, he still found a high-end courier company to mail the small glass bottle the next morning. In order to prevent the smell from leaking, not only did he seal the bottle tightly, but he even wrapped it with at least 3 layers of adhesive tape. At first, the courier refused. After all, the other party's behavior was too sneaky, and he didn't even let him open the box to check. He said that it was a normal nutritional protein for a girl to use on a facial mask. But who are you kidding? Who would send a facial mask with such a tight package? Who would send a facial mask in such a small bottle? The courier had reason to believe that the thing that the other party was trying to mail might be poisonous, and he even wanted to call the police. Sir, do you think this is appropriate? You're dressed so sneakily, and you want to mail such a strange thing. I asked you what it was, but you didn't tell me. Shouldn't you at least let me see what's in the bottle? But you don't agree. I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you want to express. I can't accept your order. I really can't accept it. Why don't you find someone else? The courier waved his hand, turned around, and wanted to leave. He even put his hand in his pocket, planning to call the police once he was far away. Qin Guang was placed in an awkward position. Actually, he could have asked someone from his company to help him, but he was afraid that if someone saw it, it would be embarrassing. Besides, even if someone didn't see it, it would be too disgusting to let someone he knew deliver this to him. He had thought that he would be rejected if he called the courier, but he didn't expect the man to look like he wanted to call the police. Left with no choice, he took off the sunglasses, hat, and mask on his face. All right, you should know who I am now, right? The courier was stunned for a few seconds before he suddenly reacted. Oh my God, you're... He gulped before continuing, all-rounder? Qin Guang? Qin Guang, the star of women? Qin Guang nodded. Can you help me deliver it now? Well, although I didn't expect to see you here, our company has a rule that you have to look at something. Qin Guang took out a stack of red notes from his pocket. I understand your company's requirements, but I really have some inconveniences. How about this? Since it's a same-city express delivery, why don't you help me deliver it privately? That won't do. If the company finds out, Qin Guang took out another stack. There's about 3,000 or 4,000 here. As long as you don't tell anyone, who will know? Anyway, if someone asks, you can just say that you didn't accept my order, right? The red notes that Qin Guang had taken out added up to nearly 6,000 yuan. The purchasing power of the new world's RMB was greater than that of the old world. 5,000 to 6,000 yuan was equivalent to 2 to 3 months of this young man's salary. In the end, the young man succumbed to the temptation of money and accepted the small bottle and the stack of red notes that Qin Guang had wrapped tightly. Qin Guang wasn't afraid that he wouldn't do anything after taking the money. He was famous, rich, and powerful. The young man knew that if he dared to cause trouble, Qin Guang had 10,000 ways to make him disappear. After sending off the young man, Qin Guang returned to his room and took out his phone. He began to think about how to call everyone to his place for the meeting. Before he could make the call, he received a call from an unknown number. Qin Guang answered the call with confusion. He heard a vaguely familiar voice. It was Wang Long, whom Qin Guang hadn't talked to in a long time. He was Wu Tong's deputy when she was the captain of the Wenxing town branch. Now, after Wu Tong was promoted, Wang Long followed suit and became the captain of the Xinhua district branch. Mr. Qin, I'm sorry to call you at this time. Qin Guang didn't think much of it. Instead, he had a bad feeling. Given his simple friendship with Wang Long would only contact him if he had something important to tell him. What's the matter? Well, the bureau is in some trouble and may need your help, Mr. Qin. Wang Long said hesitantly. Where is it? Tell me, I'll be there right away. He didn't know what happened, but since Wang Long was asking for help, it might really be something serious. It's at Xinhua Industrial Park, East Gate, number 32, Zone D. The director didn't want me to contact you, but I think the problem is serious, so I don't think it's a good idea. Okay, I'll be there right away. Qin Guang went downstairs and drove to the Xinhua Industrial Park as fast as he could. He drove in a hurry, and while waiting for the traffic lights, he searched for information online. The place was a large industrial park outside the inner Third Ring Road in Wutong's district. There were many factories of large enterprises. Several of the top logistics companies in China and the world had built their large warehouse centers in the southwest region. Zone D was the warehouse center of one of them. It was a large automated warehouse with a total area of more than 500,000 square meters. At this time in the warehouse of Zone D, there were two groups of people confronting each other. However, neither of them were from the police force. One of them was a young man wearing the uniform of the warehouse center's staff. He should be an ordinary employee here. His face still had the youthful look of a student, and he looked like he had just started working. On the other side were three men in suits. The atmosphere was quite tense, and the conflict between the two groups seemed to be on the verge of breaking out. One of the middle-aged men in a suit crossed his hands and said coldly, "Your name is Fire in the game, right?" The young man shook his head. "I don't know what you're talking about." The middle-aged man in the suit chuckled. "The system won't lie. Since we've already exposed your code name, Fire, and mentioned the game, and you still didn't have any adverse reactions, it's useless no matter how you act. We know you're a player. We're 100% sure, or else we wouldn't have found you. We don't want to be punished by the system." Seeing that he couldn't argue, the young man could only sigh helplessly. "What's your purpose in finding me?" As he spoke, he looked at the three people in front of him nervously. In his heart, he already knew that he was in trouble. The middle-aged man in the suit shrugged. "I know you gained a lot from the last mission. Hand over your reward points." "All right. You still have a D-grade destruction bomb, right? That's a valuable treasure. Hand it over together and we'll let you go." "Impossible." Fire waved his hand angrily. "Dream on." The middle-aged man didn't care. "Do you think you have a choice now? You're just an E-grade player, but we have a D-grade player and two E-grade players who are close to D-grade. Also, I forgot to tell you. I was born in a traditional martial arts family. I can take on 10 ordinary people like you." The young man in the suit gritted his teeth. He knew that since the other party dared to find him, they must have 100% confidence. "I know who you are." He recalled the three-man team he had encountered in the last mission. In the game, these three people had been scheming and rather selfish. In order to fight for the slightest benefit, they would kill other human players. That was why these three people had improved very quickly in the game and were very strong. In the last mission, he had joined the same temporary team with these three people for a long time. They had only parted ways when the mission was about to end. However, he didn't expect that he would be caught in the real world. Among these three people, there must be a company executive who had observed him for a long time before confirming his identity and coming to find him in the real world. "Since you know that I have a destruction bomb, aren't you afraid that I'll detonate it and die with you?" Fire's heart was filled with unwillingness. He knew that even if he handed over the item, he might not survive. The middle-aged man in the suit was completely unmoved. "Are you joking? As far as I know, the equipment and items in the game can't be used in the real world." Fire gritted his teeth. "You only know about E-grade items. How do you know that D-grade items can't work? Do you dare to bet? I have nothing to lose. One person in exchange for 3 of your lives. It's worth it." The three people in the suit looked at each other with a dignified expression. Fire guessed correctly. Although there was a D-grade player among the three, they had exchanged for 3 contracts in order to form a team. In addition, their luck in the game was quite average. They had never obtained any D-grade items, so they weren't sure. "You're bluffing. As long as you hand over the reward points and the destruction bomb, we'll let you go. With your talent, there's hope. There's no need to do this." "I'll say the same to you. We're all humans. Just work hard in the game. You don't have to die with me. You don't have that ability. You can't use the bomb. If you have the guts, come and try." Outside the warehouse center, Wu Tong and 5 other police officers, including Wang Long, were on standby. One of the police officers said, "Chief Wu, I think if these people want to fight or kill, let them do as they please. Anyway, according to the information, these people aren't people who know their place. The 3 of them don't matter, but Fire's performance in the game is not bad. According to the Sky's standards, he's worth training," Wu Tong said while looking at the surveillance video in front of her. It was the image of the police hacking into the storage center. Just now, when Fire's code name was called, Wu Tong used the authority granted to her by Qin Guang to find the list of names in the Sky's information. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go in and save them. Chief, you're so strong. Are you afraid of those 3 rookies?" This time, Wu Tong brought police players that she had carefully selected. As for the information, part of it came from the Sky while the other part came from the police's investigation. Since more than a month ago, the three people who had nothing to do with each other suddenly became close. This time, the three of them flew from different parts of the country to the 5 capitals and went straight to the storage center. One of them was indeed a high-ranking member of this large logistics company. Before they set out, this high-ranking member made a series of clever arrangements and transfers. At this time, only the man with the code name Fire was left in the storage center. With Wu Tong's sharp senses, she immediately guessed that something big was going to happen. In fact, a long time ago she had been worried that the conflict between players might extend into the real world. Now it had finally happened. This shouldn't have been within her scope of work. It should have been the Sky's responsibility. However, Wu Tong felt that such a situation would become the norm in the future. Although the Sky's personnel were sufficient, under the tone set by Qin Guang, most of their energy seemed to be focused on the game. This kind of conflict that happened in the real world seemed to be the responsibility of the police. As long as they carefully selected and explored carefully, they should be able to find enough people in the military and the police. However, there was an error in the information. Previously, the Sky's information said that the strongest of the three was only level E. They didn't expect the surveillance system to show that one of the men had already become level D. Although Wu Tong was also level D, without Tang Ying by her side, she couldn't display much of her combat power. In the real world it was useless even if she called Tang Ying over. How could he transform? The police officers that she brought with her were all level E. They weren't strong enough. For a moment it was hard to get off the tiger. The steady Wang Long understood Wu Tong quite well. Although he didn't know why the chief was a little hesitant, he could analyze from Wu Tong's behavior that the situation wasn't that simple. This was also the first time that the police dealt with a conflict between players in the real world. Wang Long secretly called Qin Guang behind Wu Tong's back. Chapter 1242. The atmosphere of the confrontation between the two sides grew increasingly tense, but Wu Tong was hesitant to give the order to attack. The other player police officers in the station thought that Wu Tong's combat power was comparable to that of a C-class. Moreover, she was also an elite among elites. The player police officers she had brought here today were also of a higher standard, so they couldn't understand why Wu Tong was hesitating. They didn't know how powerful the destructive bombs that the two sides mentioned were, and whether they could be used in real life. If they were to compare the destructive power in the game, the explosion of a D-class consumable bomb could turn the entire Xinhua Industrial Park No. 32 upside down. In the worst-case scenario, it could even affect the nearby buildings and civilians, threatening the lives of the masses. They couldn't just ignore it. As time passed, Huolai and the trio in suits became more and more disagreeable with each other. Huolai wouldn't easily listen to the trio's promises. He knew that even if he obediently gave in, they wouldn't let him go. The identity of a player in real life was a secret, but it wasn't that important. For those that could be trusted, such as Wu Tong's police station, Qin Guang's Heavens Division, or players that had signed a party contract, they could communicate with each other in real life, and the benefits would definitely outweigh the disadvantages. However, for strangers who weren't familiar with each other, exposing their identity meant exposing themselves to a very dangerous situation. No matter how strong a player was in the game, if they were targeted in real life, they might be killed in their sleep or at any other time with a long-range sniper rifle. No matter how capable you were in the game, others could easily kill you in real life. That was Huolai's current situation. Moreover, the other party was stronger than him in both the game and in real life. They were afraid that he would rise to power in the future and seek revenge against them. At the same time, even if he didn't achieve much in the future, taking revenge against them was very simple. All he had to do was expose the trio's whereabouts and identity, and there would always be greedier and more tyrannical players appearing in front of him. So he made a decision. Under the slightly frightened gazes of the trio in suits, Huolai first took a step back. Then light flashed in his palm and a pitch-black ball appeared in his right hand. The moment the ball appeared, it grabbed everyone's attention. It lay quietly on Huolai's palm, looking just like an ordinary bowling ball. However, the cold and murderous aura emanating from it could be transmitted to the hearts of Wu Tong and the others through the surveillance cameras. Bureau of Martial Arts. Give the order to attack. We can't delay any longer. That's right. We have no idea how powerful a grade D bomb is. There are more than 20,000 people in Xinhua Industrial Park. If it really explodes, what if? At the very least we have to let them know that they're being watched so that they have some fear. We have to take care of the conflicts between normal civilians, and we have to take care of the conflicts between players. Bureau Chief, give the order. I'll go in and try to communicate with them. After a brief moment of shock, the police officers were a little excited. Those who were chosen by the game were extraordinary people. They all had extremely firm willpower, extraordinary abilities and courage and responsibility that ordinary people found hard to achieve. These player police officers did not forget their original duties just because they had the identity of a player in the game. On the contrary, they became even more determined. Regardless of whether it was their studies in the police academy or what they had seen and heard after they had devoted themselves to work, it had made their sense of responsibility even stronger. This was also the reason why Wu Tong had chosen to bring them along. Given the current situation, whoever rushed in first would be the one sacrificed if the bomb was detonated. However, none of these people retreated. In their minds, they were thinking about the other 20,000 people in Xinhua Industrial Park. Perhaps not everyone in the police force would have such a high level of awareness, but the few people chosen by Wu Tong could really do it. Seeing that there was no time to delay, Wu Tong waved her hand. Everyone back off. I'll go in alone. No? Bureau Chief, even though you're a grade D player, you won't be able to withstand this bomb. That's right. It doesn't matter if we sacrifice ourselves. There will always be a lot of grade E police officers in the bureau that haven't been discovered yet. There will definitely be a lot of people in the municipal bureau. However, Bureau Chief, you're a grade D police officer, 1 in 10,000. If you sacrifice yourself, it won't be worth it. One of the toughest police officers objected without thinking. The others were not so straightforward, but once someone took the lead, the others also took the initiative to ask for battle. That everyone calm down. Bureau Chief, I just called Minister Chen when I went over there to investigate. It won't be long before he arrives. Wang Long swallowed his saliva and said aloud. Minister Chen? Some police officers did not react. Wang Long explained again, the Minister of Heaven, Qin Guang. Everyone suddenly understood and their hearts became a lot more relaxed. However, the way everyone secretly looked at Wu Tong was a little strange. Since a long time ago, there had been rumors in the 5 capital police system that Qin Guang had a close relationship with the fiery bureau chief, but she had always been stubborn and refused to admit it. She only said that the two of them were brother and sister by marriage. If it was someone else, they might have joked that this godsister was most likely that godsister. However, the other party was Wu Tong. Everyone could only guess, but no one dared to joke with her. They did not even dare to gossip in private, for fear that they would be dragged out to train alone. Now that the minister was personally handling this matter, the bureau chief had to admit it even if he did not want to. Wu Tong turned around and glared at Wang Long. What are you doing? You called the Minister of Heaven for such a small matter. What's the point if word gets out? What will others say about me, Wu Tong? What will they say about our Xinhua branch? Then wouldn't I become a soft bureau chief who uses my personal connections and can only rely on a man to protect me? Wang Long was stunned. He did not expect her to be so angry. In addition, your explanation of concealing your true intentions here is very strange. We all know whether you're soft or not, and you're definitely not soft. But aren't you admitting that Minister Chen is protecting you? Seeing that Wang Long did not understand, Wu Tong explained again, Sai, you won't understand even if I tell you. The Minister of Heaven is a national treasure, and the Minister of Heaven is even more important. Although Qin Guang was an easygoing person, he didn't treat his identity as anything important, and he didn't treat his identity seriously. But we can't be like him. He can even lie at home and play games when he has nothing to do, but he just can't take on missions like ours, understand? This was the first time a player was enforcing the law in the national police system. In the future, it might become a model. If he had to step in for such a small matter, others would think that the strength of the Chinese police players was too weak. Although the news will only spread among the players since the player rate of our Xinhua branch is so high, what about the C6? Where's the CIA? What about the KGB? This is a major event that will affect the entire world. Wang Long finally understood. As expected of the bureau chief. You really have foresight. Then Wang Long's eyes unconsciously floated to the tablet in Wu Tong's hand. His face stiffened and he pointed to it and said, it seems that Director Chen has already entered the Martial Arts Bureau. When did he go in? Wu Tong looked down and cried out in surprise. It turned out that Qin Guang had already appeared in the warehouse in a rather domineering manner. The trio in suits and Hua Lai, who were originally confronting each other, jumped in fright. Who are you? The D-grade player among the trio in suits reacted the fastest. He turned around and shouted angrily. Hua Lai, on the other hand, was calmer. He only glanced in Qin Guang's direction from the corner of his eyes. You are? Qin Guang ignored him. Instead, he carefully looked up and down at the situation. In fact, he had purposely bypassed Wu Tong and snuck in directly because the one who called was Wang Long and not her. This proved that she did not want to contact him. If he had communicated with Wu Tong first, she might have come up with all sorts of excuses, which would have been a waste of time. Now it's all good. I don't care who it is. No matter who it is that wants to cause trouble, I'll slap them flat first. Then all of you can go and cultivate obediently. However, when Qin Guangzhen saw Huolai's face, he was fiercely shaken. If he remembered correctly, this should be someone who had already died in the real world. World Sand? Qin Guang asked doubtfully. Huolai and the trio in suits also recognized him. He was the only S-grade player in the world, the undefeated legend among humans. Whether it was in traditional fields or anything else, Qin Guang was unparalleled in the world. The trio was at a loss at first, then despair. Since this person had appeared, it seemed that all their efforts today would be in vain. Huolai, on the other hand, was relieved. From a moral point of view, he was the one who was robbed of his resources. He was also the weaker party. His reputation as an all-rounder had always been good. Since he was here, he must have come to uphold justice. However, what did he mean by World Sand? Huolai pointed at himself. Mr. Qin, are you talking about me? I don't know who you are talking about, but I believe in Hua. The Hua of the famous Han Dynasty writer Hua Tsubing. His name is Huolai. Not World Sand? That's weird. These two looked exactly the same. Even their temperaments were similar. It was impossible for there to be two people who looked so similar in this world. During the world-shattering war, World Sand was the only one who could fight against Qin Guang. Qin Guang had a deep memory of it. It was impossible for him to remember it wrongly. Qin Guang was puzzled. What was going on? Your ability in the game is to control dust, right? Huolai's mouth was wide open. How did you know? This time, it was Qin Guang's turn to scratch his head. It's a mess. Everything is a mess. The person who died in his hands was resurrected. However, his identity was completely different. He was no longer an assassin who was adopted since young. His surname was also not sure. Forget it. Keep the bomb. It's useless. Since I am already here, you guys better know your place. Qin Guang planned to calm the situation first before interrogating them. Mr. Qin, if there is nothing else, can we leave first? The D-grade player among the trio in suits asked. Qin Guang looked back at him and smiled. What do you think? Chapter 1243. The three men in suits looked at each other. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect that such a small matter would attract the S-grade guru Qin Guang, and he seemed to know Hala. Hala, this is just a misunderstanding. The D-grade suited man saw that the situation was not good and took the initiative to admit defeat. Qin Guang first looked at the former World Sand, now Hala, and his ears twitched slightly. Dense footsteps could be heard from afar. Wu Tong must have discovered the situation inside and was rushing over with her men. Since Wu Tong was coming, then Hala had to keep the bomb in his hand. Hala, didn't you hear what I said? Put your bomb away. Mr. Qin, Hala was a little hesitant. It seemed that Qin Guang wanted to uphold justice for him, but this bomb was the only thing he could rely on at the moment. What if this Mr. Qin was actually greedy? I know what you're thinking. Don't joke around. Even if a D-grade bomb exploded in my mouth, I wouldn't even blink. Hala's body trembled, thinking that this was reasonable. He immediately laughed at himself and kept the bomb at the same time. The three of you come here. If I find any of you disobedient, you'll be a corpse in the next second. Believe me, I'll do what I say. The three men in suits approached with a bitter face and shrunk shoulders, looking like they really had no other way. Qin Guang nodded and simply started the case. That's right. Now let Hala speak first. You tell me what's going on. A trace of hatred flashed in Hala's eyes. Mr. Qin, these three people are a team in the game. They teamed up with me for a short period of time in the last mission. I originally thought that it would be over after the mission ended, but I didn't expect them to record my characteristics and then find me in real life. They want me to hand over all the reward points and the D-grade bomb that I was holding in my hand just now. The situation was similar to what he had guessed. Qin Guang commented, "This is all because of your poor pseudonym. How can there be someone who sounds exactly the same as you? If I were you, I definitely wouldn't call you Huolia but Monksha or something like that. In any case, your ability is to play with sand." After lecturing Hala, Qin Guang turned to look at the three men in suits. What else do you have to say? You're quite capable. You're planning to rob us first, then kill us to silence us, right? Mr. Qin? He was slandering me. That's not the case at all. Do you have another explanation? Come on, try making up a story to convince me. Qin Guang was very good at reading people. In just a few seconds he could clearly see who was telling the truth and who was lying. In front of the most powerful best actor in history, your half-assed lying abilities are simply not enough at all. Back in the game he framed the three of us and almost got us killed. We're just here to demand an explanation from him. The bomb that he had was originally our loot. He ambushed us at the last moment and stole it from us. We were so angry that we came up with ways to find him. A middle-aged man from the back of the three men in suits finally spoke up. It was originally very difficult to find him. Luckily, I happen to be a major shareholder of Shunda Tong and the person in charge of the administrative department. Coincidentally, he has been behaving very strangely recently. His name is Hala. We observed him for a whole month before we confirmed it was him. Hala immediately retorted, "I didn't steal anything from you. You're slandering me." The D-grade suit man retorted, "You may look like you're not very capable, but you're actually very cunning. You might be able to fool us, but you can't fool Mr. Chen." Qin Guang could not be bothered to expose them. Since Wu Tong would be arriving soon, he could leave the three of them to Wu Tong. As for Hala, he could consider directly absorbing him into the Heaven Division. In another old world, Hala was the strongest assassin of the Shattered, who had died by his hands. The Shattered was the sworn enemy of the Guangding General Headquarters. In the new world, he had saved his life and absorbed him into the Heaven Division that had evolved from the General Directorate of Light and Stability. Everything was truly destined by the heavens. Raise your hands. Qin Guang, don't think that we're afraid of you. Even though you're an S-grade in the game, this is reality. As Qin Guang was thinking, the suit man who had been standing at the back without saying a word suddenly pulled out a gun from his waist. The black muzzle was aimed at Qin Guang's head. Qin Guang turned around to look at him. It was a shiny revolver with a large caliber and a thick and long barrel. One look and one could tell that it was an extraordinary weapon. The D-grade suit man's expression suddenly changed. He no longer tried to defend himself. Instead, he looked at Qin Guang with a smug expression, thinking that he had Qin Guang in his grasp. Qin Guang's expression did not change. "You guys, haven't seen the video I took at American Airlines LAX? Do you think this thing is useful to me?" "What's that?" The three men in suits were confused. Qin Guang turned to look at Hala. "You don't know either?" Hala shook his head. "Mr. Qin, why don't you raise your hands? At most, I'll just hand over the thing." Qin Guang was at a loss. It seemed that the conflict at LAX had never happened in the New World. It was not surprising. China was the strongest country in the New World, and the status of the Chinese overseas was quite high. There was no basis for racial discrimination. People would kneel down and lick their boots. Regardless of whether it was himself or any other Chinese, it was impossible for them to suffer such severe unfair treatment on American Airlines. No wonder they thought he was afraid of guns. Forget it. It's not like it matters anyway. Qin Guang smiled and shrugged. He turned back to look at the man with the gun. "All right, you can try to shoot. If you can kill me, I'll consider you good." He did not ask them if they had never watched High God before. They definitely knew, but in their minds, this was the strength he had displayed in the game and he could not use it in real life. "Put the gun down." At that moment, a shout came from the door of the warehouse. Qin Guang did not need to turn around to know that it was Wu Tong. Her voice was very loud. When she saw Qin Guang being pointed at with a gun, she lost her usual rationality and calmness. If the hostage had been someone else, the experienced Wu Tong would not have jumped out so rashly. She would have chosen to calmly hide in a corner. She would have either urgently dispatched a sniper or relied on her own ability to snipe from the shadows. But now she was a little out of her mind. The three men in suits and Hala's reaction was even more intense. When they turned their heads, they saw Wu Tong raising her gun and walking forward step by step. The black muzzle of the gun was aimed directly at the middle-aged man with the revolver. Behind her were a few other police officers. Although they felt that Wu Tong's actions were a little rash, since the director had made the decision, they could not drag her down. Only the player police officers, who were especially good at sniping and shooting, quietly snuck over from another direction, planning to ambush from the side. At that moment, Qin Guang turned around to comfort Wu Tong. He pressed his hand down and said, "Don't be nervous. This is nothing. All right, put the gun down. You are no different from a toy in my eyes." Qin Guang did not care that he was being pointed at with a gun. He reached out and grabbed the gun as if he was going to snatch someone else's toy. "No!" Wu Tong and Wang Long shouted at the same time. The middle-aged man in the suit with the gun was stunned for a moment. When he found an opportunity to pull out his gun and point it at Qin Guang, he thought he had successfully turned the tables. Even when the police appeared, he did not take it seriously. After experiencing life and death in the game, the three of them were cruel and merciless people in real life. Now that they had become players and embarked on the path of raiders, even expanding their hunting range to the real world outside of the game, the three of them did not plan to live a peaceful life. Encountering this situation today was already within their expectations. In fact, during their last mission, they had even broken out in a fierce battle with the other party. This time they encountered Qin Guang and the police, which made the situation more serious. Looking at Qin Guang's palm that was getting closer and closer, the man in the suit with the gun was confused at first. Then, his expression quickly turned ferocious. "You think I don't dare to shoot?" At the same time, the other two quietly put their hands into their pockets, intending to take out their weapons. Qin Guang was expressionless. "No, of course you dare. It's just that I don't care. Also, I deliberately slowed down. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to react and your gun would be gone." Bang! There was a loud noise. Thick smoke and dust rose from the revolver, and the deafening echo echoed in the warehouse, making everyone's ears buzz. In the end, he could not hold it in. This special powerful revolver did not disappoint him. Just by listening to the sound, he knew that it was several times more powerful than ordinary ones. The scene became silent for a moment. Even Wu Tong's face was pale as she looked in Qin Guang's direction. Qin Guang still maintained his right hand forward and did not move. The man in the suit was stunned because he clearly saw that in the gap between the index and middle fingers of Qin Guang's right hand, there was a powerful explosive shell that he had personally loaded. Unexpectedly, it was clamped by someone's hand. Taking advantage of the moment when he was stunned, Qin Guang shook his hand and took the gun from his hand. Then, his figure flashed and the other two men were also disarmed. He crushed these things into scrap metal in front of everyone and threw them on the ground. Qin Guang shrugged. "Okay, tie them up." He didn't plan on letting these three people go. He couldn't care less about the fighting and killing in the game. This was the survival of the fittest. This was also in line with the rules of human evolution. Those who were eliminated were the weak. If they really had talent, people like Hala or Shersha would become strong in the game sooner or later. Hala, for example, was only grade E, but he had already obtained grade D tools. In addition, his ability also gave him extremely strong survivability and combat power. Luck was an indispensable condition on the road to becoming strong, and talent was even more indispensable. Hala had both. In time, it was not impossible for the current Hala to reach the height of Shersha. At that time, he would play an important role in the battle between humans and Protoss. However, if such a genius fell in the modern world and died in the hands of three people with evil thoughts and no specialties, who only knew how to steal from others, that would be the biggest joke in the world. Now that they had spread their influence to the real world, they had to apologize. Qin Guang planned to be a model. These three people had to die. Not only in the game but also in the real world. Later, he would think of a way to use the Heavenly Division's methods. Whether in the game or in the real world, he would report this as a model. Naturally, many people with evil thoughts would think twice. This was the purpose of the existence of an official organization like the Heavenly Division. To maintain order and preserve the strength and potential of humans in the game as much as possible. Unknowingly, Qin Guang had entered the mode of the Heavenly Division's minister. "Hey, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first." "Alright, Hala, this is my name card. When you return, report here. Just say that I asked you to go. Congratulations, you've been recruited by me." Hala's face was blank. He still had not recovered from the shock of Qin Guang catching the bullet with his finger. "Ah." Seeing that he was in a daze, Qin Guang grunted. "That's right, you've been recruited by the Heavenly Division." Heavenly Division. Hala was stunned for a moment. Then he fell into a state of ecstasy. As a player who had gone through several missions, he naturally knew about the Heavenly Division. In the previous mission, the temporary leader of the team was just an ordinary member of the Heavenly Division. Although he was only a D rank, the astonishing strength and intelligence that the other party displayed during the mission made him fascinated. At that time, he had taken the initiative to ask to join the Heavenly Division in the game but was rejected. "That, Mr. Qin, don't you need a political review?" He still found it hard to believe. Snapping his fingers, Qin Guang replied, "My words are the background check, so you just have to go." "All right, Sister Wu Tong, these three people can be sentenced to death, right? If it's not convenient for you, I'll do it myself." Wu Tong swallowed hard and then patted Qin Guang's shoulder. "You little brat. I'm almost scared to death. Won't killing these three dirty your hands for no reason? Don't worry, leave it to me. Mr. Qin, please spare us." The three middle-aged men in suits knelt down and begged for mercy. Qin Guang, who was about to leave, turned his head slightly. If it was in the past, I might have been soft-hearted and let you guys go. After all, the three of you did not kill anyone in front of me. However, I'm sorry things are different now. If there's a next life, you should try to be good people. Chapter 1244. After saying that, he was still a little worried. Forget it, I'll help you take care of these three first. Although the three men in suits had been disarmed, who knew if they had other hidden cards up their sleeves as players? To prevent any unexpected incidents from occurring out of nowhere, Qin Guang really played the villain this time. Before leaving, he simply slapped the three men in suits 7 or 8 times, then turned around and left without looking back. This time, the three men in suits were completely in despair. Originally, they really had the idea of summoning their inventory in the game after Qin Guang left and catching the police officers off guard. Now all their bones had been broken by Qin Guang. Not to mention counterattacking, they were almost out of breath. Wu Tong, Wang Long, and the others looked at each other. Qin Guang's calm expression when he was dealing the finishing blow really made them feel a little anxious. This guy felt like he wasn't smashing 3 people but 3 ants. Looking at Qin Guang's back, Wu Tong frowned slightly. Why did this kid suddenly seem like a different person? He wasn't like this before. Officer, can I leave now? Hala appeared to be calmer than Wu Tong. In his mind, the strongest human should have this kind of bearing. Clear rewards and punishments, swift and decisive. Hala asked himself if he had done anything wrong ever since he became a player. Although his parents were ordinary wage earners, they taught him to be a person with principles and morals. When he was poor, he shouldn't look down on himself, and when he was rich, he shouldn't forget himself. It was precisely because of this belief in life that Hala, who came from a famous school and majored in logistics, first rejected many high-paying jobs in large companies and chose to start from the bottom in this company. After becoming a player, he didn't choose to resign, but to better complete his job. Of course, the experience in the game also changed him a lot. He became calmer and more determined, and even a little bloodthirsty in the face of illusionary beasts. He also realized that he had this side to him. But whether it was in reality or in the game, he still behaved calmly, only doing his job step by step, and at the same time in the game, steadily advancing step by step. So far he had never done anything shameful. He believed in a completely different creed from the three men in suits. Perhaps it was because Mr. Chen had a pair of eyes that could see through one's heart that he was willing to trust me and let me become a member of the Tian Division? That was the strongest organization in all of Wuxia, no, the entire world. This was a common occurrence. When a quest was issued, several human players from the player's birthplace would stand up to find someone to match the secret code. Then they would quickly form a reliable and trustworthy party that others would envy. Although it was free to fight solo, it was human nature to team up. Only by forming a team and relying on the strength of a team could human players quickly strengthen themselves in the game and protect their lives. After all, the Protoss were unscrupulous when they encountered lone humans. However, if a large party of 10 or even dozens of human players appeared at the same time, even a B-level Protoss would have to think twice. Obviously, the players of the Tian Division did not sign a contract. They were often successful in forming a party. There was only one reason: they had many people, many strong players, and they belonged to the same organization in reality. Furthermore, they were strictly managed. Even without the restriction of a party contract, these people were willing to abide by the rules and restrictions of their own organization and trusted their companions. There were many other organizations like this, but there was no doubt that the Tian Division was the strongest. Most of the Chinese players who could naturally communicate with each other wanted to join the Tian Division. However, their organization was very strict and they only recruited members in reality. Ordinary players could not get in even if they wanted to. In addition, although the Tian Division did not easily recruit members, their attitude towards other players in the game was relatively harmonious. They would almost never bully others. Instead, they directed all their hostility towards the powerful Protoss faction. Every time they formed a temporary party, they would recruit many ordinary players to join them in the game. As long as they were willing to obey orders throughout the mission and do what they were supposed to do, at least in this mission, these players who joined the Tian Division's temporary party would have the highest survival rate and a more generous reward. So far, the Tian Division had proven their strength through the few game missions they had participated in. Unless they bumped into a crazy A-class or S-class Protoss, the Tian Division was simply unstoppable. Not only that, the popularity and strength of the Tian Division had also brought about another change. Looking at the entire world, because of the strength of China, the Western countries had tried their best to promote the threat of the East. This had greatly hindered the promotion of the Chinese language. Everyone knew that the Chinese were especially good at assimilating others. The best medium for assimilation was language, followed by cultural invasion. Of course, the Western countries would not just wait for their doom. This was great. In reality, they could not simply use force. Even if China was already so strong, they still had to maintain restraint. However, there was no such thing in the game. The game was crueler than reality. It followed a simpler law of the jungle. The rather merciless law of the jungle forced all players of other languages to submit to a bigger fist deep in their hearts. The fist had the final say. Those who did not listen would often regret it. Those who did not understand were even more miserable. Therefore, the most direct observation of the Tian Division's change in reality was that there were more people around the world who took the initiative to learn the Chinese language. Those who were chosen as players were mostly intelligent people. They learned things with great pressure and efficiency. Now, if there were any company executives or genius students overseas who suddenly developed a strong interest in the Chinese language, there was a high chance that they would be players if they wanted to give it a try. In the past 2 months, many international friends had changed from being unable to speak the same language at the beginning and could only hope that the Wuxia people were willing to speak English or other minor languages with them. Now they could communicate in simple Mandarin. For example, something. Brother, you are so handsome. Sister, you are so beautiful. Can you bring me along? Can I join you guys? I am very obedient. I am a good person. Please, take me in. The influence that the Tian Division brought to China was evident. So many people dreamed of joining such a big organization. Now, he had become an internal member just because of a sentence from Mr. Chen. This was simply too blissful. Thinking of this, Haley clenched his fists and secretly decided that he would not let Mr. Chen down. Wu Tong turned back to look at him, then looked at the 3 men in suits who were lying on the ground motionlessly. All right, just follow Qin Guang's instructions. Now go to the place, he said. I also do not know why he thinks so highly of you, but his foresight is always right. After leaving the Xanhua Industrial Park, Qin Guang did not stroll around. Instead, he returned to school. No one would believe this, but the reason he returned to school was because he had to take a makeup exam the day after tomorrow. He had to pass the makeup exam for 2 consecutive semesters. If it was not for Qin Guang's strong reputation and his previous promise that he would not mess it up, the school and institute leaders might have helped him take a leave of absence. Truth be told, Qin Guoli and Feng Rong no longer cared about his studies. Speaking of which, Qin Guang felt that he couldn't let the 12 years he spent to get into university go to waste. No matter what, he had to graduate and get his hands on his books. This had become an obsession that he could not get rid of. Of course, he was also thinking about another matter. The Tian Division could not contact Wenwen, and the Wen family could not contact her either. These 2 days he had called her at least 5 or 6 times, but no one picked up. He sent WeChat, QQ or even text messages, but she did not reply. It was as if she had disappeared from this world. Qin Guang felt a little uneasy. In the past, he had confidence in Wenwen's ability. He thought that in this world, other than himself, no one could hurt a single hair on her. But as time passed, his heart was not at ease. You should have replied to me. With no other choice, he decided to first go to Wenwen's roommate in school. This could be considered as an indirect way to inquire about her situation. At the very least, he had to know what she was doing before she disappeared and what was going on in her head. Chapter 1245. After returning to school, Qin Guang went straight to the School of Economics and Management, where Wenwen studied in the Department of International Trade. As he became more and more famous, more and more people knew him and his popularity grew. Gradually, the students of Gokyo University could no longer maintain absolute calmness. The more famous he was, the more attractive his photo and autograph were. Moreover, everyone knew that Qin Guang was easy to talk to. As long as he was not in a hurry, he would not refuse anyone. Therefore, there were more and more people who wanted to ask him for a photo or an autograph. He was not in school for a long time last semester. People in the dormitory and class blocked him many times. Others returned without success, and this trend gradually died down. Right now, if Qin Guang were to swagger around the school, who knew how lively it would be? In order to avoid causing too much of a stir in the school, Qin Guang had to wear a full suit when he walked on the road, trying not to let himself become the focus of the crowd. Fortunately, the 2nd semester of the 4th year had just started. It was early spring and the weather was cool. The 3-piece suit on his face was not too hot, and it was not too eye-catching. With the help of his acting skills, he forcibly reduced his sense of existence in the crowd, and it was really easy for him to find the outside of Wenwen's professional class. He waited outside the classroom on the 5th floor for about 10 minutes. When the class was over at noon, Qin Guang took the initiative to directly find Wenwen's 3 roommates in the crowd. He had seen these 3 people more than once before, and he had also eaten with them. However, Wenwen's relationship with other people in the school was weak. She seemed to be a maverick and she only nodded to others. Even with her roommates, although she never had a conflict with them, there was always a layer of barrier between them. A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. The other girls also had complicated feelings for Wenwen. Outstanding people always had a different kind of attraction to others, whether it was a man or a woman, but Wenwen was very indifferent, making it impossible for others to get close to her. In addition, as the saying went, the story in a university girls' dormitory was a book that could not be finished. Their relationship was clearly very good, but they would suddenly harbor resentment. She and she are a small group, but she and she are another small group, she and she are still a small group. There were a total of 4 people in the dormitory, so they could create 3 WeChat groups. Wenwen's dormitory was not so complicated, because the other 3 girls were united against outsiders. Sometimes they envied Wenwen's appearance, temperament, and studies, but sometimes they were jealous. However, Wenwen had always shown a kind of emotional indifference. Her usual speech and treatment of others were simply impeccable. Her roommates would feel confused and feel that they should not be jealous of her. As for Wenwen's bestie, Qin Guang, her roommates' opinions had also changed over the years. At first, everyone thought that he and Wenwen were from 2 completely different worlds. But later, everyone hoped that the 2 of them could be together. A toad wanted to eat swan meat. If the swan was really eaten by a toad, the swan would not be so noble, right? They thought that she was very capable, but in the end, her boyfriend was also ordinary. They really thought that she was a fairy who did not eat the food of the world, but in the end she still had to eat and she was not very picky. But after a while they would feel that it was not worth it for Wenwen. Especially after Zheng He showed a good impression of Wenwen and tried to take the roundabout route to save the country, giving all kinds of gifts to Wenwen's roommates. This psychological deviation became even more serious. From time to time he would whisper in Wenwen's ear, saying that Qin Guang was not worthy of her and so on. This was also the reason why Qin Guang did not have any dealings with these 3 people later. What were you guys talking about? Although Miss Wen was beautiful and charming, the old man was not a cabbage that no one wanted, okay? What's more, the old man and Miss Wen had a pure friendship. This brother was loyal and really did not have those messy things that you guys said. At that time, his heart was really pure, but the changes that happened later made him a little unprepared. Of course, the current Qin Guang was no longer the same as before. He was like a black chicken that flew into the sky and became a phoenix. The opinions of Wenwen's roommates had already changed 180 degrees. Moreover, they heard that Zheng He had committed a crime and was found out some time ago, and he actually committed suicide to escape punishment. At this time, the image of Qin Guang in the hearts of Miss Wen's roommates was even higher. He was an international big shot, a superstar of the generation, an all-around genius, and an invincible figure who was awesome no matter what he did. The most important thing was that he was super rich and in fact he was a little handsome. After the change of opinion, everyone said that it was no wonder that Miss Wen was dismissive of others at that time, but looked at him with special eyes. Maybe Miss Wen had already seen through his potential. It was really infuriating to compare with others. In their hearts, Wenwen really took all the advantages in the world. However, after the gap between the 2 sides was too big, these people on the contrary lost their jealousy, and their mentality returned to peace. They only secretly regretted that they did not use their relationship with Wenwen to get along well with Qin Guang. However, although they now saw the reality clearly, Qin Guang no longer appeared in the school and even Wenwen was gone. These 3 roommates also sighed helplessly and regretted their past. Qin Guang originally wanted to keep a low profile, but he did not expect that as soon as he and the 3 people revealed their identities, 2 of them held their hands and cried out in surprise. "Oh my God! Qin Guang! Oh my God! Qin Guang, why are you here? We all thought that you would never come back to school again." The other person did not call out his name and was just babbling there, completely losing his mind. Qin Guang looked at the 3 people with a pair of dead fish eyes through his sunglasses. "Damn, you guys are monsters, right? Is there a need to be like this? Forget it, it's not strange if it's like this." If these 3 people could treat Qin Guang calmly in the past, and not look down on him because of his poverty, then they would not be crying out in surprise again and again because of his meteoric rise. The three people's ruckus immediately caused a commotion in the entire hallway of the school building. Seeing that the situation was not good, Qin Guang could only take off his sunglasses and helplessly glanced at the three people. Then, using a voice that only the three people could hear, he transmitted his inner strength and said, "I really admire you guys. Forget it, we'll meet in half an hour at the Kano Cafe outside the school. Please don't do this again. If there's a stampede, can you take responsibility?" After saying that, Qin Guang simply took off his hat and mask and shouted toward the hallway, "Everyone don't rush, I'm here to do something today, I'm not taking photos. I'm not signing autographs. Later I'll take a few days to do this. Everyone don't get agitated." But it was useless. "You said not to get agitated, so I'm not agitated? You don't know how difficult it is to see you now." Seeing this, Qin Guang's head swelled up, and he thought that it was not a good idea to continue like this. No wonder the famous university students in the past did not go to school at all. They were always in trouble and it was really unbearable. However, he was different from others. Famous university students became famous first, and then they were admitted through a special channel by the university. He, on the other hand, studied quietly for 3 years and then suddenly soared to the sky. That was why things were so difficult for him. Studies were so important in the eyes of others, and in the future he would also get a national college entrance examination graduation certificate. The special channel for ordinary famous people could not be compared to him. Since that was the case, when he was free, the old man might as well take photos with you for 10 days straight and sign autographs for 10 days straight. There was no problem with his stamina. There were tens of thousands of people in the school, and I would take photos with tens of thousands of people, and then I would sign hundreds of thousands of autographs for you. I would take photos with you until you vomited. I would sign autographs until you vomited. Let's see if you were still coquettish and chaotic. Of course, he also had other ideas. The school would definitely not only have Lin Jingwei and a few other players. Gokyo University was, after all, one of the top 985 universities in the country. Coupled with his influence in the school, the number of fans among his classmates was quite high. Many of the previous flame wars and debates on the internet, the Big Five alumni were one of the main forces, so the number of players in the school should not be low. It was just that now, everyone was a straggler without a system or organization. He might as well take this opportunity to sort out the players in the school, and then with the team of Lin Jingwei and a few others as the core, he would create a Big Five alumni association in the game. Although the alumni association could not be compared to heaven, it would definitely only be beneficial to the development of the power of the entire human race in the game. Hearing that he would not take photos or sign autographs today, the students and teachers who were swarming over felt a little disappointed. However, it was difficult to stop the flow of people, and they were still pushed forward by the people behind. Even if they could get a closer look at him, they could go back and brag about it to others. Seeing that the situation was not good, Qin Guang made up his mind. Damn it, goodbye. He leaped up and actually flew out from the balcony of the 5th floor. That was not all. While flying in the air, he turned around and waved at the crowd, saying loudly, "This is a dangerous move without professional training, please do not imitate it. I have already said that when it comes to jumping off buildings, the old man is a master. Let's see how chaotic you guys are. Sigh, it's a pity that there is no world in a cup when jumping off a building. Otherwise, my body movements would be 100 times more elegant." While he was complaining in his heart, he suddenly dropped his head and looked down at the satchel on his waist. The heavenly Holy Grail was reacting. Isn't this inappropriate? It came again without saying goodbye? Is the world in a cloud elephant cup so unreasonable? Wait, I seem to have a choice? Qin Guang did not care that he was flying in the air, nor did he care about the people who were looking at him from the balcony. Instead, he focused on feeling the waves coming from the heavenly Holy Grail. That's right, it seemed like he had a choice. He could choose to delay the activation of the mission, and he could even change the mission attributes of the world in a cup within a certain range. The specific situation was as follows. If it was activated immediately, it would indeed be a world of jumping off a building. If he chose to delay it and activate it within the next 7 days, then the world of massacre would appear. The range of choices was huge. Choose one of the two. Either jump off a building or massacre, which one should he choose? Qin Guang only considered for less than half a second. According to the humble opinion of the old man, jumping off a building was definitely more reliable. The casualty rate of the human gamers in the world of massacre was indescribable. At that time, the gamers were the elites of the elites, and there was even a super genius like Chu Zijin who had transformed into peasant. There were nearly 100 of them, but only a few survived. It was a tragic sight. Though he did not know how amazing the world of jumping off a building would be, the casualty rate would not be higher than that of the World of Massacre. After all, the gamers were strengthened in the game, so they should be able to withstand a mere jump off a building. Spirit of the Holy Grail. I choose to jump off a building, he shouted in his heart. Chapter 1246. As soon as he finished speaking, his entire consciousness was sucked into Cloud City with a whoosh. But the Yunqing that appeared in front of him this time made him feel very strange, and he even thought that he had come to the wrong place. The walls were still the same as before, towering into the sky. The statues that he got later were still standing proudly, especially the statue of his strongest physical body, which was the most eye-catching. After all, such a huge statue of a naked man was the only one in the world, and no one was as thick-skinned as him. But now the appearance of the statue was a little strange to Qin Guang. To be precise, it had no face. The face of the statue had no facial features at all. It was as if a round duck egg stone had been put on it, and then the work was cut short. If the lower half of the statue was not the same as the one that Qin Guang was familiar with, he really couldn't believe that it was him. Don't ask him why he was so familiar with his figure. Every person with a good figure could answer this question. But what really made him feel strange was not the statue, but the densely packed houses in the whole Yunqing. That's right. The Yunqing in the past was empty. At first glance it was a huge square. But now the Yunqing that appeared in front of Qin Guang was densely packed with countless houses. These houses looked similar with only minor differences. They were all the simplest kind of small square boxes. However, there were too many of them. Looking at them, Qin Guang couldn't even count them. He only guessed that there should be in the millions. In addition, he also found some differences in all the houses. Most of the houses looked the same. They were 3x3 square boxes that looked like shared private rooms. But from time to time, one or two different houses would appear. They were no longer 3x3 coffin boxes, but 4x4 latrine huts with roofs, eaves and windows. Above the latrine huts, there were dozens of more beautiful and exquisite small courtyard houses scattered throughout the whole Yunqing. They covered an area of about 8x8. In addition, Qin Guang also keenly found 7 of the most unique and huge castles. Each castle was about 30 to 40 meters tall, and each had a different style. They occupied an area of at least 10 acres. There was a medieval European-style Gothic castle, a tall Chinese pagoda, a modern mechanical feeling, and a pure black one that looked a bit like an off-road vehicle. Although the other 3 weren't as distinctive, they were no different from the previous 4 in terms of grade and aesthetics. The difference between the 7 castles and the coffin box next to them was like the difference between an elephant and a rabbit. Qin Guang was at a loss. When did his empty Yunqing suddenly become a bustling city that could accommodate millions of people? What kind of scientific principle was that? Also, what was up with the magnificent buildings in the center of Cloud City that looked like ancient palaces? Who the hell was going overboard? Without the permission of the real owner, the old man, to build an illegal building here. You even took my spot. And it was cultivated to such a crappy level. It was as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know that he was super rich and classless. Do you believe that I can call 100,000 city enforcement officers to tear it down in minutes? Why are you still in a daze outside? Come in. While he was cursing in his mind, a familiar voice suddenly came from the palace. It was Lioli. You're back. Qin Guang asked in surprise. Then he suddenly came back to his senses. Could this shabby house really be mine? He suddenly felt that it was pleasing to the eye. Lioli replied to him angrily, What do you mean I'm back? I want to leave but I don't have the ability, okay? Then where did you go before? Why didn't I see you when I came in? Isn't it because you're so bad that the entire Holy Grail changed? I had to clean up the mess for you. You can blame me for that? Qin Guang floated into the palace, and saw that Lioli was lying on a comfortable sofa in the middle of the magnificent hall with her legs crossed. However, the computer desk in front of her was still the same as before, which was very incongruous with the style of the hall. Qin Guang couldn't be bothered to argue with her. He asked, What's going on outside and in this palace? What exactly happened? How come there were no signs at all? Lioli put down the mouse, looked back at him, shrugged and made an innocent face. What if I said that when the world in the cup ends this time, it won't be like this the next time you come in? What would you think? Qin Guang frowned and thought for a moment. He asked, You mean these houses are prepared for the players? Lioli finally showed her rare enthusiasm. That's right. Now, every time the world in the cup is triggered, the players will have to go through a transit process. Your Cloud City realm is the transit station. Every house here represented a player's residence. To other players, these residences were absolute territories that they could not enter. In addition, fighting is absolutely prohibited in Cloud City. It is a safe zone for all players. After a while, the players' spiritual bodies will gradually take shape in their respective houses. In addition, there will be about an hour of buffer before the official start of each mission. You may not have noticed, but in the southeast corner of Cloud City, there is a very large open space. The players will conduct transactions there using reward points as currency. Qin Guang pondered for a moment. So, different houses represent different levels of players? The shabbiest coffin box is the residence of E-level players, and the slightly better ones are for D-level players? Sihiyuan is for C-level players? But why are there 7 castles? Isn't this a bit too different from Sihiyuan? Liuli rolled her eyes at him. You're really forgetful. Qin Guang was stunned at first, and then he revealed a look of joy. You mean these 7 castles are the tinder I left in the slaughter world? Liuli sighed. I can't sense what you did in the slaughter world, but I think it should be like this. After all, when the players first appeared in the game mission, they had C-level or close to B-level strength. Then, in the next few missions, they seemed to have entered a different space from the others. Each time the harvest was very rich, and now they are all A-level. This time, Qin Guang could not help but be surprised. There's actually such a thing. However, he could not understand why these people did not appear in the eyes of the players earlier. So much so that the human players still thought that he was the strongest human being in S-level, and those below him were all C-levels. Liuli, who had seen through his doubts, said, maybe it's because they came into contact with the new cup world before the real mission started. When the history of this whole new world was fabricated, there was an ethical conflict which is equivalent to a bug in the computer program. So, from the beginning, they were isolated in different mission spaces and could not come out of the castles to come into contact with others? Qin Guang nodded. That's most likely the case. Alright, what about this palace? This is yours. The higher the player's level, the more luxurious the residence looks. Doesn't this palace suit your identity as the only Super S-level player? Wait, Super S-level? Yeah. But don't others say that I'm an S-level? That's because they are weak, so they can only set their sights so high. Don't you have any F***king idea how capable you are? There's still some truth to that. I'm just being humble. Oh, and that statue? Why do you have so many questions? It's the same principle as a house. When the new cup world is triggered, your appearance will change every time you come in. So, the statue has become a faceless man now. It's how it usually looks. Qin Guang was relieved. Although it was quite awkward to put the statue of the naked man in front of countless people all over the world, as long as his face was covered, no one would know that it was him. Was fine. There was no way that someone would be able to recognize him from the statue's penis, right? This shameless fellow. Doesn't he know how to put a towel on his waist? That's right. This is too shameful. Wu Tong and Tang Ying walked out of their respective huts one after another and gathered together as they spoke. Sister Shirihue, the more I look at the statue, the more familiar it seems. It looks like Qin Guang's figure. How did you know? There are many boys with good figures in this world. There's no mark on the statue. How could Jiang Yage tell Jin Shirihue that she recognized him from the overbearing shape of the cavernous body? In a corner of Cloud City, Wenwen walked out of a courtyard house. She raised her head to look at the statue from afar and blushed. Then she quickly lowered her head and walked towards the market. No one noticed that behind the seemingly ordinary walls of Wenwen's courtyard house, there was an exquisite house made of jade. Sweetheart, do you think that every S-level player has a statue? Then when we reach S-level, if we also have a statue like this, wouldn't it be too embarrassing? That's not possible. Also, this statue is very strange. Previously, when the minister didn't move, this thing was also here. I just realized that Faceless looks very similar to the minister, but it might not be him. Sweetheart, when you get back, pull down his pants and take a picture for me to see and compare? Get lost. Qin Guang really didn't expect that there would actually be so many people who recognized him from the statue. After all, many people had been miserably screwed over by his strongest pile driver in history. Their memories were so deep that they could recognize him even if he turned into ashes. Outside, people were coming out of various houses one after another. However, Qin Guang wasn't in a hurry to go out for a stroll. Instead, he fiddled with a computer in the depths of his palace. In front of him were densely packed statistics. Looking at these things, he, the owner of the Holy Grail, at least regained some sense of ownership. Total number of E-level players, 11374598. Total number of D-level players, 89125. Total number of C-level players, 71 total number of B-level players, 1 total number of A-level players, 7. It wasn't just these simple statistics. The information was even detailed to the specific abilities of each player. Qin Guang could look up these things at will. He could even use the non-existent surveillance cameras to directly see what was happening in each player's home. This meant that in the realm of the Holy Grail, all human players had no secrets in front of him. That's right, that's more like it. The old man was now considered a master. Qin Guang thought to himself as he watched a blonde girl with big waves and blue eyes, who he didn't know at all. She was twisting her naked body in front of the mirror in his room, as if admiring his makeshift body. That's right, which heartless genius could actually surpass others and reach B-level in one fell swoop? He simply didn't give others a way out. Fortunately, the old man was born with cheats. He had even brought 7 other people with him. This B-level fellow must have relied on his own abilities to rush up. This was too much of a beast. Clicking on this person's information, Qin Guang was elated. It was actually my big miss one. At that moment, a commotion suddenly broke out in the public square outside. It's open, it's open. The door is open. An expert is coming out. This must be at least A-level, right? Quite a number of people were gathered outside one of the castles. The castle's door slowly opened. Chu Zijin covered her eyes and walked out slowly. She had been confined in this strange world for too long. Finally, she could go out and take a breather. Looking at the densely packed crowd outside, Chu Zijin's face gradually bloomed into a smile. She thought to herself, our Qingguang group is the strongest. Chapter 1247. After a while, not only did the gates of Chu Zijin's castle open, but the other 6 castles that had never made a move before also slowly opened their doors. Some were strong, some thin, some tall, some short, some old, and some young. Since then, the 7 Pyro Company players that Qin Guang had survived the first massacre world officially came out of seclusion. As soon as the 7 of them appeared in the outside world, they immediately caused a commotion. Countless players watched from below, and many of them even took the initiative to introduce themselves in an attempt to befriend the 7 of them. Some people even kowtowed and tried to become their followers, even if it was just a verbal promise. For example, if they were lucky enough to be assigned to the same quest space during this quest, they would ask the other party to take care of them. It was not that these players who took the initiative to seek refuge with them were not strong-willed, but there were millions of people in the world, and everyone had different principles in life. Some people were stubborn and persistent in overcoming difficulties with their own strength, but others were good at using all the resources they could use to look at anything calmly. Before making a decision, they would analyze the pros and cons in their minds. Bowing down to the strong might seem like a spineless act on the surface, but if they could really befriend these strong people, the benefits they could reap would be unimaginable. In the game, they could face a life-and-death crisis at any time. Teaming up with the strong would give them the greatest sense of security. They could also follow behind the strong and challenge opponents that they could not possibly defeat. However, these 7 people seemed to be very aloof and disdainful of others taking the initiative to seek refuge with them. They had no intention of expanding their influence or forming a team at all. Actually, these 7 castles were not built in a day. At first, they were just 7 courtyards. Although they were much better than the coffins next to them and appeared to be unique, there were more than just these 7 courtyards in the vast city. However, the situation changed later. According to the people of the Yin family who lived near the 7 castles, they watched the 7 courtyards change almost every time they were given a mission. When the other courtyards remained still, the 7 courtyards turned into 7 skyscrapers at an extremely fast speed, and then into 7 castles at an extremely fast speed. Other than the palace in the center of the city, there were no other buildings more magnificent than these 7 castles. As the 7 great castles continued to expand, the houses that were originally evenly distributed around the 7 great castles were constantly pushed away. The density of the houses around the 7 great castles increased, making the 7 great castles seem even more mysterious and special. What was even stranger was that no matter how noisy the people outside were, no matter how astonishing the treasures appeared in the trading market, the 7 castles remained motionless. No one could enter, but no one opened the door and walked out either. Everyone was baffled. In this game, players did not have to worry about their true identity being easily exposed. After all, every time they entered the game, their appearance would be randomly reset. As long as they did not expose their characteristics too obviously like some people, they could communicate with others without worry. The trading market was very important to the players. Everyone would receive different rewards from quests, and everyone's awakened abilities were different as well. A tool that was completely useless to one person could be a priceless treasure to another. Therefore, the players cherished the precious 1-hour buffer period before the start of each quest. They would often seize every minute and second to exchange with others in the trading market, set up stalls to sell their useless tools, and then use their reward points to buy some things that they needed. Although there were currently no large-scale trading intermediaries in the market, several large official organizations led by the Heavenly Division had a unique advantage when it came to trading. With a large number of members, the number of tools that could be obtained from each quest would be more. After the internal system distribution, the internal members' needs would be satisfied first. However, there would still be some people who could not be satisfied because of their special abilities or the types of tools that they needed. Similarly, there would also be some tools that were too unorthodox to be distributed. At this time, the Heavenly Division would bring the surplus tools to the trading market and first trade them for reward points. Then, they would send members who were good at dealing with people to search for the tools that the members needed to buy. For a large organization like the Heavenly Division that had close to 100,000 people, even if they managed to slip through their fingers, they would still be able to exchange more than 10,000 tools for each quest. Though the other large organizations were unable to reach such a scale, they were still superior to the solo gamers. Over the past 2 months or so, almost every player had obtained some sort of benefit from the trade market. After all, this was an absolute safe zone. Everyone was free to buy and sell, and no one could force anyone to buy or sell. As long as one had reward points, one would be able to find a tool that was suitable for one's abilities. Even if it wasn't perfect, it was better than having useless tools. However, the owners of the 7 castles ignored all the benefits. No one knew what they were thinking. Now that the castle gates were opened, the 7 strongest human gamers, who were second only to Chen Guang, were finally revealed to everyone. This was a huge boost to the morale of the gamers. Though there was competition among the human gamers, their biggest enemy was the celestial race, who viewed the lives of the mortals as worthless grass. Peasant and his companions were perplexed. They felt that their memories were in a mess. When the game started, the 7 of them didn't know that they were gamers. Chu Zijin, the producer of Hyper God, was the person who inserted the second half of the video of Qin Guang fighting the monsters into the main show. She had a different view of the second half of the video. She didn't doubt the authenticity of the footage. The video was given to her by Qin Guang. Qin Guang wouldn't speak without thinking, so there must be a reason behind it. She didn't expect the footage to be in the game. In her mind, she didn't know about the game. This was obviously contradictory to the 7 castles. With her talent, if she wasn't chosen, it would be the biggest joke in the world. Even within Tianguang Media, there was a similar situation. An employee who was fortunate enough to become a player did not believe in the heresy and took the initiative to test Chu Zijin. Unexpectedly, as soon as the words left his mouth, his identity was immediately reset. He was completely stripped of his identity as a player and returned to the life of an ordinary person. He could not remember the process of him becoming a player after all the hardships he had gone through to reach D-class. The gamer was kind. He thought that with Chu Zijin's talent and her relationship with Chief Chen, she would definitely be a core member of Chief Chen's team. He went to the pavilion closest to Chief Chen and established a relationship with Chief Chen. In the future, he would have the opportunity to become a peripheral member of Chen Guang's team. This was a benefit that others couldn't be envious of. He didn't get any benefits and he committed a taboo. Chu Zijin's memory was erased because of this incident. She couldn't remember what the gamer had said to her. Now she recovered her gamer identity and memory. She appeared as a level A warrior. Just now, when her body was gradually taking shape, the memories surged in like a tidal wave. Only then did she know what had happened during this period of time. She understood that in the past 2 months, there were many changes in the world that she didn't understand. She was a gamer from the beginning. It was just that she had been locked in an independent mission space. It was as if everything had happened in her sleep. Moreover, while other players had retained their memories and were doing well, her mind had been locked. Every time she participated in a mission, her memory would be isolated. She had only recovered now. The story of all this started half a month before the game's arrival. They had experienced the slaughtering world with Chen Guang. Under Chen Guang's care, they had grown rapidly in the extremely special slaughtering world, completing 2 awakenings at an unbelievable speed and becoming C-rank players. Moreover, they were blessed by the heavens with unique abilities and talents. The confusion on everyone's faces was because they were recalling these things. So many unexpected things had happened in this period of time. The 7 of them ignored the crowd in front of them and turned to look at the palace in the center of the city. That was Mr. Chen's residence, right? How strong was he? Chapter 1248. Another few minutes passed. Seeing that the masters of the 7 great castles were being unreasonable, the numerous players who had intended to bow their heads could only quickly and resentfully retreat. Everyone either had some items on hand waiting to be sold, or had saved up enough reward points to purchase some treasures that matched their abilities. They didn't know what the mission this time would be like. Perhaps they would have a slim chance of survival. Even if they could slightly increase their own strength, it would be good. At the very least, those who didn't have items to sell and didn't have reward points to purchase items would at least want to stroll around the market and see if there was anything they fancied. If possible, they would promise more generous rewards. Both sides could agree on a place to meet again before trading. The distribution of this strange city was quite orderly. Although there wasn't any difference between each E-rank coffin, this wasn't a problem for humans. The players agreed to use the tallest statue of the naked man as the north, and then according to north, south, east, and west, they divided the area into 4 areas, A, D, and D. Afterwards, they broke it down according to the distance from the central palace, and then divided each area into 9 blocks from 1 to 9. Both sides could agree on a secret signal and agree on a place to meet next time in a certain area, which row and which latrine house with eaves. At the very least, even if they didn't gain anything in the market, they could at least make some friends. Perhaps everyone would be assigned to the same space for this mission. When the time came, they could make some connections outside in advance. At the very least, they could have an additional ally at the start of the mission. Although this kind of temporary alliance wasn't reliable, and there were many cases of allies backstabbing each other in the back, no matter how fragile an alliance was, it was better than nothing. It was better than making contact with complete strangers. As for the 7 great castles that were revered by the people, they all walked towards the palace in unison. Lu Fei, who had originally only vaguely guessed that the strongest person in the slaughtering world was Qin Guang, was now certain in his heart. That archmage right Qin Guang who deserved a beating, that shameless Qin Guang, you really deceived me miserably. I knew that a magister from another world wouldn't be so simple as to just be an idle boss. You must have a purpose. This game must have been created by you. Are you doing this to return to your world? Are you trying to abandon us all? See if I don't teach you a lesson. Lu Fei clenched her fists fiercely. I, your sister, am different from before. I'll let you have a taste of the power of the second block. It was guaranteed to be 10 times or even 100 times more powerful than those so-called masterpieces made from super silicone gel. Cough cough. For some reason Lu Fei's steps were a little light. Almost at the same time, 7 people appeared outside the palace. At this time the area was empty. Almost all the other players had gathered at the trading area. Qin Guang, on the other hand, couldn't make up his mind in the palace. Should he summon these people in and make them his subordinates? Needless to say, Chu Zijin and Sister Lu Fei were both trustworthy people. But as for the others, it was worth discussing. Although they were all A-class in terms of actual combat power, the amount of help they could provide him was rather limited. He was a level S expert and these people were far inferior to him. In a high-intensity battle, they wouldn't be of much help and might even become a burden. For more information, please refer to the first slaughtering world. When the 7 of them arrived, they looked at each other. Only Rubber Gal and Peasant started chatting softly. The other warriors stood behind them and didn't say a word. In the slaughtering world, Mr. Dang was the friendliest to Peasant and Rubber Gal. It was obvious that he was old acquaintances with the 2 ladies. Furthermore, although Qin Guang's appearance and figure were completely different from the slaughtering world, there was a voice in the hearts of the 7 that told them that the 2 of them were the same person. They didn't understand how Mr. Dang changed his appearance to that of Qin Guang in God of Joy. Perhaps it had something to do with the birth of the game world. He had played a big game of chess. What was he plotting? Even the most arrogant genius high school student had the illusion that their fate was in someone else's hands and that they were completely in someone else's control. It didn't mean that he didn't want to surpass Dang Wu or Qin Guang, but he knew the chances were slim. Instead of trying to surpass him in vain, he might as well make use of the opportunity he had gotten to know him in the game from the very beginning and become his lackey. There were 7 of them, including Dang Wu himself, so there were 8 of them. To others, the price of a team contract for 8 people would probably be sky high, and they wouldn't be able to afford it at all. However, to Mr. Dang it was definitely not a problem. There was only one problem. Was he willing to accept them? Peasant, if I'm not mistaken, your real identity is Chief Chu of Tianguang Media? You were the one who leaked the video. Lu Fei lowered her voice and used a special technique to speak softly. Chu Zijin nodded and said, "It's me. I know your sister Lu Fei and I've heard of you in real life. It's a pity that I didn't have the time to meet you. I didn't expect to meet you here. This is fate. We're both his women, so we're on the same side. Lu Fei laughed. Chu Zijin blushed and said, I have nothing to do with him. It was Lu Fei's turn to be shocked. It can't be? I saw Qingguang Media's report on television. You're a delicate little beauty. Why would he let you go? This isn't his usual style. Sister Lu, you're joking. There's nothing between me and the boss. Forget it, that's not important. I just don't know what's going on in this guy's head. It seems that the 7 of us are indeed a little different from the other players. Lu Fei turned her head to look at the surroundings. She was thinking about how Xan Qin and Wu Miaowan, whom she had met once on Mount Baylor and had a fortuitous encounter together, were faring now. Based on what the 2 little girls had shown, they were definitely players as well, right? The vicinity of the magnificent imperial palace was empty. Only the bustling sounds of people could be heard from the distant market. I asked around on the way here just now. They said that although most players are solo players or in small teams, many large organizations in the real world have expanded their organization structure into the game. For example, in China, there is an organization called Heavenly Division. It is very powerful. The elven archer behind Chu Zijin and Lu Fei couldn't help but speak after there was no movement from the imperial palace. Heavenly Division? Lu Fei and Chu Zijin muttered softly. They felt that the name was both familiar and unfamiliar. A name appeared in the hearts of the 2 of them, but there was a strong sense of distance between them. Isn't it called Qingguang Media? Chu Zijin seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be asking someone else. Lu Fei was about to nod, but she subconsciously shook her head, as if the Qingguang Media had never existed. The hale and hearty old man who had been silent all this while expressed his opinion. I know this division. It's called the Heavenly Division. After this mission I'll ask oh no, Mr. Qin. If he agrees, I'll join the Heavenly Division. He's the minister of the Heavenly Division. He definitely wants us to join the Heavenly Division. A middle-aged man with the demeanor of a soldier behind the old man said loudly. That's right. It's our duty to obey military orders. Even if it's not in the game, we'll still follow orders in real life. Lu Fei asked, wait, you're saying that Qingguang is the minister of the Heavenly Division? That's right. The old man nodded. Lu Fei felt that her thoughts were a little messy. She vaguely remembered that Qingguang had a nickname called Swollen Chrysanthemum. Back at Mount Baylor, Wu Miaowan often used this nickname to tease Qingguang. Then he should be the director. But it didn't seem like that had happened. At this time the palace gate finally opened. Qingguang slowly walked out and stood in front of everyone. The old man and his 2 followers, the middle school student and the archer, bowed in unison. Chu Zijin and Lu Fei, who were familiar with each other in real life, didn't seem that afraid. However, their behavior was much more respectful. Qingguang had already made a decision. He walked forward and pointed at Lu Fei and Chu Zijin. You 2 will team up with me. This is the team contract. Take it. Then he pointed at the old man and his followers. If I'm not wrong, the 3 of you are from the military, right? Yes, Mr. Qin. The old man bowed and said, Mr. Qin should have seen me before. Qingguang squinted at him for a while and thought about it. You're not old, but you're not young either. You should be the old man who sat at the end of the table when I attended the meeting in Yenjing. Yes, it's me. But as long as Mr. Qin is willing to let me join the Heaven Division, even if I have to start as a small soldier, I won't say a word. Qingguang smiled. That's not necessary. Whether it's your battlefield experience or your current A-level strength, you're 1 in a million. I won't use a small soldier to humiliate you. How about this? I'll allow you to open a special combat team in the Heaven Division. Your position will be second only to me and the 2 deputy ministers. What do you think? Thank you, Minister Qin. In fact, when the old man said that Qingguang had seen him before, Qingguang had already guessed the old man's identity. However, he didn't call him out because he wanted to protect him. Tan Zhaohua, the commander-in-chief of Shun Special Training Camp, was considered a relatively young and vigorous person among the old men. Many years ago he was the king of soldiers on the battlefield. Now that he was old, he had become the commander-in-chief of Shun Special Training Camp. In these years he had trained many special combat elites for the country. Even China's most elite teams such as Dragon's Fang, Spirit Blade and Piercing Wolf, came from Shun Special Training Camp. Of course, after Qingguang personally became the chief instructor and started a batch of training, the elite soldiers produced by Shun Special Training Camp rose to another level. Apart from the members who entered the Heaven Division, There were also many soldiers scattered in various departments. When he first met Qin Guang, Tan Zhaohua never thought that one day he would become his subordinate. But now that it really happened, old man Tan didn't resist at all. After making arrangements for these people, Qin Guang turned his head to look at the last middle school student. The middle school student didn't seem very submissive. Instead, he looked straight at him with a face full of expectation. Qin Guang smiled. "You little brat, I don't know you very well. But I think very highly of you. If I rashly let you form a team, I'll be adding more restrictions to you. Rather than that, I'd rather let you go and let you develop freely. With your current A-rank realm and that special ability of yours, as long as you don't provoke a god emperor like Yu Ting, I'm afraid the Protoss won't be able to do anything to you." The middle school student laughed. "But I want to follow you more. It'll be easier that way." Qin Guang waved his hand. "Before you say something like that, think carefully first. Do you want to touch and surpass your own limits, or do you want to be a carefree person? Following me will indeed allow you to start off faster and avoid many dangers, but this isn't necessarily a good thing for the cultivation of your personality. In my opinion, I hope that you can explore it yourself. But if you really want to rely on me, of course I don't mind." The middle school student pondered for a moment, then turned around and left decisively. Qin Guang thought for a moment, then said from afar, "I have an idea to set up a few peripheral organizations for the Heaven Division. When you've found a few people you trust, you can come find me again. When that time comes, I'll let you be the peripheral organization of the Heaven Division. You won't have much responsibility, but you'll be able to share information about the Heaven Division." The middle school student was overjoyed. He turned around and said, "Thank you, Mr. Qin." Then Qin Guang looked at the elven archer. Back then, the few arrows he'd shot at her had been extremely painful, which meant that she was still quite capable. However, Qin Guang didn't know much about her, so he wasn't very willing to give her a precious team contract. But if he excluded her now, it would seem unreasonable. Also, back in the slaughtering world, as a member of Chu Zijin's team, she was very cooperative. She could even form a combo with Chu Zijin. Qin Guang thought for a moment, then said to her, "I can't give you the team contract for now, but I hope that you can join the Heaven Division. What do you think?" The elven archer looked at Chu Zijin with disappointment, but seeing Qin Guang's determined expression, she didn't insist. "That's fine. Don't be unwilling. Although there are no players above grade C in the Heaven Division, there are 100,000 strong people in the Heaven Division. Everyone can communicate with each other and be assigned together. Whether it's personal development or the sharing of resources, it's not something that ordinary people can compare to. Your ability is heavy on offense and light on defense, so you're not suitable to work alone. Your personality is also relatively gentle, so you're suitable to team up with others, unlike that brat who's arrogant. Rather than becoming an insignificant character in my team, it's better for you to create your own dagger team in the Heaven Division. In the future, your achievements might not be inferior to that brat." It was rare for Qin Guang to explain a bit more. Old Tan, who was beside him, also nodded and said, "Mr. Qin is the head of the Heaven Division. Becoming a member of the Heaven Division will naturally be under his protection." This made the elven archer feel much more at ease, and her face lit up with joy. "Thank you, Mr. Qin." After making arrangements for these people, Qin Guang wanted to lead Chu Zijin and Lu Fei into his palace. Unexpectedly, when the two of them passed by the door, they were firmly blocked by an invisible wall, unable to take a single step in. Qin Guang had an awkward expression on his face. Did this unlucky cup see through his crafty plot? Sister Lu Fei with a rubber body? All kinds of positions, cough cough. Forget it, forget it. Looks like even if we're in a team, we can't enter other people's private residences. You two don't need to worry about me for now. Go to the market. I've already notified Xan Qin and Wu Miaowan. You two go contact the Heaven Division's trading group and see if there are any items suitable for you. Since he couldn't complete his proper business, Qin Guang didn't want to delay the two of them any longer. He told them to hurry and find items that could increase their strength so as to not waste time. As for why he didn't go himself, it was because he felt that with his current strength, it was unlikely that he would be able to obtain any usable items from this kind of trading market, unless a large number of A-rank players appeared among the players. At that time they might be able to find something they needed. After waiting for another half an hour, accompanied by the inexplicable ringing of a bell in the sky above Cloud City, the countless people gathered in the trading point instantly tensed up. The players who had already completed their transactions were either sitting cross-legged on the ground, closing their eyes and praying silently, or stubbornly looking up at the sky with resolute eyes. The players who had yet to complete their transactions sighed dejectedly. In the end, they still couldn't find the items they needed. Hopefully, this mission wouldn't be too overpowered. Those who were in the middle of a transaction were frantically urging the other party to hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. On the other side of the world in a cup, in the endless celestial world, countless gods stood up at the same time. The call from the origin of the celestial world came from the bottom of their hearts. A strong sense of mission enveloped the hearts of all the gods. Another game was about to begin. This time they must continue to ruthlessly crush the humans. Now, the gods could already feel the benefits provided by the origin of the celestial world. As long as they performed better in the game, they would be closer to the origin of the celestial world, and they would be able to experience unprecedented benefits in their cultivation. Chapter 1249. Different from human civilizations, there were all kinds of temptations. Money, power, beautiful women, handsome men, and even rankings in online games could be temptations for different people in life. Every one of these temptations could make people unconsciously stop moving forward. No matter what industry it was, only those who had no distractions could reach the peak. But even human beings who could reach the peak were still unorthodox in the eyes of the gods. The gods of the endless god realm only had one goal in mind: to make themselves stronger. Even though there were professions such as trade and research in the endless heavenly realm, the fundamental purpose of doing business in the endless heavenly realm was to earn resources and strengthen oneself. Or they could study in the endless heavenly realm. The knowledge in the endless heavenly realm was completely different from that of humans. They researched how to cultivate more powerful mercenary beasts, how to use elemental energy more rationally and efficiently, or how to cultivate magical medicine. These were the areas that the gods were interested in. Even if one was a journalist or historian in the endless heavenly realm, they could find traces of these great existences becoming stronger from the illusions and deeds of other powerful gods and get close to the true meaning of their power. Unlike the chaos of humans on Earth, all the actions of the gods in the endless heavenly realm had only one purpose: to obtain more power. A technological civilization like the humans on Earth was nothing in the eyes of the gods. Not to mention the master gods who owned hundreds of millions of planes. Even the god kings who could only build a few secondary planes could breed advanced technological civilizations in their own planes that were many times more advanced than the humans on Earth. The fundamental purpose of raising a technological civilization was to use the power of these technologies to pry into the mysteries of the laws. The quantum physics of the humans on Earth was just the most basic of the foundations of science and technology in the endless heavenly realm. Now, after hundreds of millions of years of silence, the peaceful endless heavenly realm was once again stirred up. The origin will had placed this so-called game in front of the gods. The gods only needed to use a portion of their divine will to form a projection, and they would be able to complete the task. Moreover, as their levels in the game continued to recover, their true bodies in the divine realm would also be able to feel the origin will's care more clearly. The primordial laws that were originally extremely far away in the fog would become clearer under the blessing of the origin will, as if they could reach out and touch them. Such cultivation conditions were enough to drive many gods crazy. Even the most powerful Lord God would not dare to say that his divine thoughts could be completely close to the primordial law, let alone those divine emperors, ultimate gods and divine kings. Even if they only had the chance to look at the primordial laws from afar, it was enough to make these gods go crazy. The summoning from the bottom of their hearts was getting stronger and stronger. The gods, who were mentally prepared, slowly opened their arms and allowed their minds to become more active than ever. A sense of joy that went straight to the depths of the divine soul came. The divine thoughts of the gods soared into the sky, passed through the long tunnel, and appeared in the brand new world structure. The mission this time had finally begun. Eighth brother, do you think we'll have a chance to meet that guy called Noon? If not, give me a Qinguang. Those mortals always told me not to be arrogant, that the true genius of humanity, the almighty Superman Qinguang, would show me how powerful he was. Bah! What omnipotent! Superman? How vulgar! Disgusting! Low level! I can't come up with such a vulgar and lacking nickname even if I use my 10 billion years of life. Shut up. Idiot, I've told you 100 million times not to call me eighth brother. Yes, eighth brother. Do you really want to die? I repent to you, respected Lord Eight Directions. The 8 divine emperors no longer paid attention to the follower beside them. Instead, they frowned and looked at the mysterious world in front of them. As for the noisy follower beside him, his mind was still thinking about the incident between Noon and Qinguang. The name Noon came from Wethany. Her purpose was to remind the gods not to let their guard down just because the human players were weak. The experts among humans were indeed unfathomable. As for the name Qingguang, it came from the mouths of many human players. Although this rank A follower had never personally fought against human players, there were people in their party who had dealt with human players many times. Many of them would say this name before they died. It was obvious that Qingguang's ability held an extremely high position in the hearts of all humans. As for the leader of this party, the youngest of the 10 strongest divine emperors in the endless celestial realm, the expression on his face was exceptionally interesting. Just like a certain someone he had once deeply admired 1,000,000,000 years ago, the young 8 Directions would always give it his all in whatever he did, leaving no regrets. Even though it was just a game, 8 Directions still put out 200% of his focus and led his team to take root in the game as quickly as possible, developing and growing. Now the 8 Directions party had become the second strongest party in the celestial realm, second only to Yu Ting's party. He was not convinced. He believed that Yu Ting had merely taken advantage of the advance party. If he had been the one to lead the advance party to the celestial realm for the first time, he would have been able to leave more seeds for the endless celestial realm. He would not have been like Yu Ting, who had almost been wiped out. As a divine emperor who led the celestial realm, he had actually been defeated by a pigeon. Wasn't that ridiculous? With the power of the 8 Directions party, what was a mere game to him? In these few missions, his actions did not disappoint his ambitions. However, faced with the scene in front of him, he felt like a cow gnawing on a pumpkin. Even as talented as he was, he still could not understand why such a strange scene would appear. The previous few missions were either about snatching resources or killing powerful phantom beasts. Otherwise, it was simply a competition for survival. There was even a survival challenge that completely restricted all special abilities in the middle of the mission. It was a reference to the games in the human world. That game was called PlayerUnknown's Battleground. The players who participated had to parachute, run away from the blue circle and hold a gun, etc. In the end, it was 8 Directions himself who relied on his superb reflexes and planning ability to transform into a Voldemort at the last moment and successfully fought against 5 enemies with an 8x scope. Then at the end of the mission there was some line like, "Great luck, chicken dinner." The 8 Directions Divine Emperor almost failed miserably in this mission. He did not have a good impression of this strange line. What right did he have to eat chicken dinner? There was no day or night in the endless celestial realm. Why couldn't he eat during the day? And why did he have to eat chicken dinner? As a god, he had not eaten inferior livestock for many years. Food that could not enhance his strength was simply a waste of life. But what was this now? What appeared in front of him was a bottomless abyss with a diameter of 10 kilometers. From top to bottom, this abyss was densely covered with countless floating islands. These floating islands were of different sizes and had different sceneries. For example, the floating island that the 8 Directions Divine Emperor was standing on should be at the highest point of the entire abyss. It covered an area of about 1 square kilometer and was covered with green trees. Above their heads they could even see the seemingly real sun in the sky. In the middle of the island there was a pool of clear water. The scenery was extremely beautiful. The warm sunlight shone on him, making him feel warm from the bottom of his heart. He had already enjoyed the glory of the celestial realm. In fact, there were countless beautiful sceneries in the dimension that he had created with his own hands. However, now that he felt that his power was greatly restricted, he felt a chill run down his spine. He still had his S-class combat power, but the ability to fly had been completely taken away. In this small dimension, it was as if the rules of flight had been tampered with. Even a god emperor like him could be completely suppressed and could not be disobeyed. This was an extremely small dimension, but the rules here were so strong that even a god emperor could not resist them. It seemed that the content of this game was richer than he had imagined. As expected of an existence that even the origin will attach great importance to. On the other side of the same floating island, 70 to 80 human players had gathered together and were whispering and arguing. Clearly, everyone was at a loss when faced with this novel mission space. The mode this time seemed to be too special. The function of the party contract is to automatically assign us to a space when we enter the mission space. At the edge of the crowd, a man and 2 women were gathered together. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. They appeared to be quite outstanding. However, they seemed to be a contracted party and had no interest in communicating with other people. They appeared to be unfriendly and the other players could not approach them even if they wanted to. The one who asked this question was Lu Fei, who had transformed into a rubber girl. Qingguang nodded. That's right. That's why I cherish the contract so much. I'm not familiar with those people. The price of this party contract is increasing exponentially. If I spend it on these people, God knows how expensive it will be in the future if I want to increase the number of slots. The spaces that Sister Lu and I experienced before were all similar to the Killing World. This is the first time we've encountered such a novel game mission. I wonder what it will be like. Chu Zijin stood at the edge of the floating island and looked down. She looked up again and continued. Above is the sky. Below us, we can vaguely see floating islands of different sizes. I just don't know how deep this abyss is. Qin Guang really wanted to tell her in advance that this was the jumping world. In this old man's humble opinion, it must be jumping down from here, layer by layer. However, he could not say it. The mission description had not been released yet. If he said it in advance, wouldn't people know that he was the one causing trouble? In addition, although he knew that this mission was related to jumping off a building, he did not know how the world in the cup would be reflected. He could only take it one step at a time. Qin Guang turned his gaze to the other side. There was a group of about 20 Protoss gathered together. The man in the middle was handsome. In terms of handsomeness, he was almost as handsome as himself. Alright, this guy relied on his looks to make a living. That's too much. He's even more handsome than me. Fortunately, I rely on my talent to survive. In addition, Qin Guang felt a familiar fluctuation from this Protoss. If he guessed correctly, this Protoss's individual strength was even comparable to Yu Ting's. He should also be a god emperor. Qin Guang sighed. He did not know whether he was too unlucky or too good at attracting hatred. Didn't they say that there were very few S-rank Protoss players? Why did he meet one the moment he arrived? Chapter 1250. While Qin Guang was looking at Eight Directions was also looking at the human players. Although he was arrogant, his character of a lion going all out to catch a rabbit made him never underestimate any opponent. Although he did not know why the origin will chose such weak human opponents for the gods, he had heard that this planet was born in the center of the original plane with an extremely high realm. Although the human beings who grew up on this planet seemed to be weak, they had unimaginable creativity and willpower. After these few game missions, the terrifying potential displayed by these mortal players still made the Eight Directions Divine Emperors secretly shocked. These human beings seemed weak, even as fragile as ants, but no matter how difficult the mission was, there would always be some amazing people among them who would turn bad luck into good luck, or adapt to various difficult mission environments at an extremely fast speed, and then continue to grow and strengthen. Eight Directions still remembered that in the beginning, these players were only E-level strength. When faced with the Phantom Beast, they could not fight back at all. However, after a short period of panic, they soon exerted their own abilities, used various ways to exert the strength of the team, and killed the seemingly invincible Phantom Beast. At this time there was a voice in Eight Directions' heart. If he completely followed the origin will of the heavenly realm, what he should do at this time should be directly and neatly obliterate all the human beings who were unlucky enough to be assigned to the same subspace as him in this mission. But another voice told him that if the person who disappeared for tens of trillions of years was here, he would definitely not do this. As great as he was, he never feared any challenge, let alone any opponent who might possibly challenge him in the cradle. He would even personally help the opponent. He was eager to be challenged and he was never afraid of challenges. He was even keen to personally train opponents for himself. Just like countless years ago when he was just a newly born mortal god, not even as good as an ant in the endless heavenly realm, he was found among the living beings and personally given a cultivation method. However, after countless years of cultivation and killing, he finally became a domineering god emperor from an ant-like mortal god, but he was not even qualified to challenge him, because he had already disappeared into thin air after leaving behind countless legends. He did not become the next Lord God as the gods had speculated, but inexplicably disappeared at the peak of his glory, leaving no trace. Even though his fans had gone to the ends of the earth, spreading their spiritual power to all the secondary planes and small worlds that he had personally created, they still couldn't find any trace of him. It was as if this peerless genius who had once dazzled the entire endless god world for billions of years had never appeared. Master Ba Feng, there's something I don't understand. Speak. I don't understand why you don't allow us to attack mortals. They are just ants, how can they compete with us fairly? You don't even understand the characteristics of this mission, but your mind is only thinking about killing people. So what if mortals compete with us? Wouldn't it be enough to defeat them head-on? If you don't have the heart of a powerhouse fearless of competition, you'll never be able to break through to the king realm. This subordinate understands. In the distance, Qin Guang pricked up his ears to eavesdrop on the conversation, and a smile appeared on his face. It seemed that the 8 Directions divine emperors were not bad people. They knew how to restrain their subordinates. In this aspect they did a better job than Yu Ting. After a while, Qin Guang finally heard the long-awaited electronic beep. The mission had begun. The beep was very concise. The jumping challenge will begin in 5 minutes. Jump off the floating island before the obliteration barrier descends and successfully reach the next floating island. The beep was very brief. Both the humans and the Protoss players were confused. 5 minutes later, however, everyone no longer had the time to wonder. Roughly 30 meters above the players' heads, a multicolored screen of light appeared out of thin air. Immediately after, the screen rapidly enveloped the players below. The towering trees on the floating island were the first to bear the brunt of the light. Then, under the dumbfounded gazes of the players, the trees disintegrated into fine powder at an extremely fast speed. This damn thing will kill you if you touch it. A young man in the crowd suddenly clapped his hands and said in a clear voice, "D***M, I understand now." The people around him turned to look at him. "What do you understand? Isn't this 100 floors for men?" "What's that?" "It's a little game that was popular a few years ago. You have to keep jumping down. If you're slow you'll be blocked, or if you hit something you'll die." Another person who was born in the 80s came over and nodded repeatedly. "Oh yes, I played that game back then. It's quite similar to what we're seeing now. What else is there to say? Hurry up and jump down." Looking at the so-called obliteration barrier that was getting closer and closer, everyone's hair stood on end. Not to mention the trees, even a few hills nearby were instantly flattened by the obliteration barrier. Fortunately, they had 5 minutes to prepare. Both the human and Protoss players had arrived at the edge of the floating islands. However, when they poked their heads out and looked down, they hesitated for a moment. The distance between the floating islands was too far. It had to be at least 200 to 300 meters. Even a cat would not be able to survive jumping from such a high height. What was even more infuriating was that the 2 floating islands were not completely aligned with each other. They were at least 100 meters apart. This meant that if they jumped from here, not only would the height be terrifying, but they would also have to jump forward. Otherwise, who knew how deep the abyss they would fall into if they jumped directly over it? However, they did not have much time to hesitate. The obliteration barrier above their heads was getting closer and closer. No one wanted to test if this light curtain that contained the power of the rule could really disintegrate them. When they were less than 5 meters away, the Emperor God of 8 Directions took a deep breath and waved his hand. "Jump. Be careful not to use too much force. We'll meet at the next floating island." As he spoke, he turned his head to look in other directions. Seeing that the mortals were still hesitating, he sneered. Perhaps there would be a strong person among the mortals who could rival him sooner or later, but it would definitely not be this group of people. Just as he was thinking about this, a man and 2 women suddenly jumped out. The man was in the middle, and the 2 women held his hands from both sides. They took the lead and jumped straight down. The arrogance on Emperor God's face disappeared instantly. Although he did not deliberately compare himself to them, he did not expect that there would really be humans who would dare to jump with him first. The actions of these 3 people were like a silent slap to his face, making him lose face. Not only that, but the mortal players who were originally standing beside the 3 people also seemed to be encouraged by the 3 people and followed suit. The 20 or so Protoss players who reacted half a beat slower actually fell behind. No longer caring about his anger, the Emperor God of 8 Directions said loudly, "Jump." This so-called jumping challenge is likely to be based on the landing time. Hearing that, he hurriedly jumped after them. After flying into the air, he subconsciously wanted to use his divine power to fly. However, as soon as this thought came to him, the divine power in his body was suddenly cut off by an inexplicable force, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. This was indeed the power of the rule of absolute flight restriction. That was not all. After he flew into the air, a new prompt suddenly appeared in the mind of the Emperor God of 8 Directions. This prompt was a GIF, which people on Earth called a GIF. The GIF was a video of a Chinese female athlete participating in the 2008 Yanjing Olympics, and the mysterious mission space actually asked him to perfectly replicate this action. The Emperor God of 8 Directions was about to follow the prompt when he heard a scream coming from above him. He subconsciously looked back and saw that when one of his subordinates jumped out of the floating island, his clothes were too complicated, and the hem of his clothes was hanging on a sharp stone at the edge of the floating island. This slight delay immediately caused half of the sea-level Protoss player's body to be enveloped by the obliteration barrier, and then he was completely torn to pieces without any struggle. Feeling that the spiritual imprint of this subordinate had completely disappeared, the Emperor God of 8 Directions expression suddenly became extremely serious. Skill score 0, art score 0. Warning player, Emperor God of 8 Directions. Consecutive 0 points will be directly obliterated. The mission spaces prompt came again, and the Emperor God of 8 Directions expression finally changed. Because he was distracted just now, he could not repeat the action and was actually warned by the system. An unprecedented sense of crisis rose from the bottom of his heart. It was obvious that this non-combat mission space was more dangerous than any previous ones. Chapter 1251. This game mission is too playful. Is that all? We have to jump off a building and perform diving maneuvers at the same time? Lu Fei teased Qin Guang, who was in front of the other gamers. Though she hadn't received professional training, she was flexible due to her love of sports. Moreover, she had been nourished by Qin Guang in the outside world. Now that she was a level A gamer, it wasn't difficult for her to imitate the diving maneuvers. Don't be careless. I don't think it's that simple, Chu Zijin reminded solemnly. Chu Zijin reminded him with a solemn expression. As she spoke, she did a 720-degree turn in the air before spinning in a circle. Technique points 10. 0. Art points 10. 0. Congratulations to Peasant for obtaining the perfect maneuver bonus. 10 reward points. Peasant raised his eyebrows and said, I got 2 10. Zeros? I got 10 reward points for nothing. Qin Guang and Lu Fei turned their heads to look at her. With Peasant's petite frame and her amazing coordination and flexibility, her maneuvers were at the standard of an Olympic gold medalist. In comparison, Qin Guang, who was more than 185 meters tall, looked stiff. However, Qin Guang didn't really care. This was just the beginning. At least it was better than the first Protoss whose pants were too long and hung on the floating island. Speaking of which, it was strange. The Protoss had clearly died far away from him, but Qin Guang's heart had sensed it the moment the obliteration barrier swept past him. He felt that there was a layer of energy in the independent green in the glass world. The obliteration barrier should have shattered the god into the most basic ions in an instant. At the same time, it should have disintegrated his divine power into the most primitive energy. Then the god should have completely ceased to exist. Why did the green in the glass world seem to have been stuffed with something new? Qin Guang was puzzled. As he followed the gift that popped up in his head, he pondered in his heart. At the same time, he spread out his mental strength slightly to investigate the characteristics of this additional rule-bending energy. Not long after, he came to a sudden realization. If he remembered correctly, this seemed to be very similar to the mysterious energy that appeared in his body after he absorbed the power of the dead Protoss after fighting against the giant mosquito array in the slaughtering world and then bursting out a colorful fart. Based on the distribution of human players, there were close to 10 million players in this small mission world, so there should be around 150,000 similar mission spaces in the Jump Off the Building Cup in-world mission spaces. There was an unlucky Gui Shen in his mission space. There were 150,000 mission spaces in total, so there must be other Gui Shen races that were unlucky. Then after this mission, how many Protoss would be obliterated, and the barrier would collapse and turn into this strange energy that was left in the world in the cup? With this question in mind, Qin Guang landed on the next floating island. He jumped first, and of course he landed first. When he landed, he received a notification that as a warrior who successfully landed, he received an additional reward of 10 bonus points. During the entire process, each person performed at least 5 to 6 sets of actions, so he didn't receive the most bonus points. Between the two grade A gamers, Peasant and Lu Fei, Peasant had a total of 6 perfect scores and Lu Fei had 4. Qin Guang felt that it was unfair and not okay. The rating system was very strict. It was too much to ask a man like him to perform the actions of a female diver. Forget it, I'll just adjust my breathing and continue jumping. He had a new discovery. The gravity coefficient in this mission space seemed to be different from that of the outside world. It was not as much as 1g. At most it was only 0.2g. As a result, although the two floating islands seemed to be far away from each other, the impact when they landed was not that exaggerated. Apart from this, when he was about to land, he could clearly feel a rather gentle cushioning force coming from the world in the cup, further slowing down his momentum. This was normal. Otherwise, falling from such a height, even if it was only 0.2g, an E-rank player would still die without a burial site. Alright, if there's nothing else, let's rest for a while before continuing our jump. Chen Guang peeked out from the edge and saw that the floating island was only 10 meters away from him. It was very close. However, he felt that it was quite dangerous because the island below was too small. It was less than 5 meters by 5 meters in radius. That meant that even though the distance was close, he might accidentally jump askew. As he was thinking, he heard a heart-wrenching scream from the side. It was an unlucky guy who jumped askew. The poor guy waved his hands and feet as he fell further and further away. He became smaller and smaller, and he disappeared into the abyss below. Chen Guang mourned for him silently. He didn't know what would happen to him after he died, but his scream was too pitiful. Be careful. The gravity might change again if you jump down from here. Don't use too much force. If you notice something wrong in the air, you can adjust your posture or think of other ways to adjust your landing point. Lu Fei said, "All right, you have the final say. I have an idea. First, jump on the spot and feel the gravity. Then jump? That's great." Lu Fei even used her rubber ability to pull Chen Guang off the second floating island and then bounced back. This time the three of them didn't rush to the front. Instead, they jumped at about the first 20 places. However, the people who jumped first were in tragedy. They thought it was the previous 0.2G and jumped lightly. The result was that they screamed and fell straight into the abyss. The smarter ones steadied themselves. They first observed the situation of others, focusing on Chen Guang and the other two. They observed the momentum of the three of them when they jumped and then used their strength. With a loud rumbling sound, Chen Guang and the other two landed on the third floating island in the order of 7, 8, 9. This time, although the three of them didn't get the first drop reward, Chen Guang got a perfect score. Chu Zijin and Lu Fei also got a perfect score. The reason was simple. The distance was too close, the gravity was too strong, and the falling speed was too fast. It was only enough for them to do a set of 3-meter board diving. As soon as the three of them landed, they quickly put their attention on the top of their heads. They moved to the inner side and tested the gravity at an extremely fast speed before continuing to jump. The third floating island was too small. If they didn't leave now, they might be smashed by the people falling from above. Before jumping, the three of them turned to look at their sides. Miserable, truly miserable. Whether it was the human players who landed first or later, they were all miserable. The top C-rank experts were barely able to stand, while the D-rank players were sprawled on the ground. As for the E-rank players, they were in a miserable state. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Those who were lucky were hanging on by a thread and hurriedly used their reward points to prolong their lives. As for those who were unlucky enough to have their heads hit the ground, then sorry about that. As soon as Chen Guang and the other two moved, the Protoss players landed in the place where the three of them had just stood. These Protoss players looked at the miserable state of the human players around them and laughed. "Lord 8 Directions, I don't think we need to do anything at all. These mortals will die by themselves." The 8 Directions Emperor frowned. "Cut the crap. Didn't you see that someone jumped before us?" Not only that, but the third floating island also exposed many problems. According to the original judgment of the 8 Directions Emperor, even if there was a suitable buffer before landing, these mortals should have all died on the third floating island. But the result was that these seemingly fragile humans were able to quickly find the most perfect way to land at the moment of life and death, controlling the damage to the minimum. Even if the so-called minimum damage seemed very tragic in this mission space, as long as one's life was saved, they could use a variety of items that could be exchanged in the shop to recover to their original state. How could the vitality of these ants be so tenacious? Don't delay, keep going. Gathering their thoughts, the 8 Directions Emperor urged again. Don't let your guard down. Including the two idiots who just fell into the abyss, we have already lost a total of 3 members. That being said, there were still 2 or 3 unscrupulous Protoss players who deliberately stood in place before jumping, blocking the human players who fell from above, raising their hands and punching them into the abyss. The 8 Directions Emperor was not happy to see this, but he did not say anything. There was another change in the jump from the third floating island to the fourth floating island. The fourth floating island did not stay in place, but moved left and right. However, this was not a problem for the Super S-level Chen Guang and the 2 level A girls. Although the 3 of them could not fly, when they realized that something was wrong in mid-air, Chen Guang used the Earth Exploder's arcana to create rocks under his feet. He kicked on them to change the direction of their flight, and the 3 of them landed on the fourth floating island. The few ordinary players following closely behind the 3 of them were also quick-witted. They used all sorts of methods to deal with the situation. Some of them had no other choice but to purchase a hang glider from the system shop while they were still in mid-air. Although this kind of action was given a score of 0, at least they would not jump crookedly. When Chen Guang saw this, he could not help but sigh from the bottom of his heart. This person's potential was really scary. Behind them, the many Protoss players led by the Eight Directions Emperor followed suit, and they also used all kinds of tricks. The Eight Directions Divine Emperors thought that they were worthy of being the natives of the original plane. These seemingly weak ants were far ahead of the divine race in terms of flexibility. Not only that, but the E-class human players who survived on the third floating island also made a prompt decision to spend all the reward points in their pockets on strengthening their bodies. Otherwise, they would use up all the inventory items that could enhance their physique in one go. Quiet Angel, spread your wings and fly down later. It's time to exert your strength. The Eight Directions Emperor thought for a moment, then said to the people behind him without looking back. Behind him, a person in white who looked like a man or a woman made a sound. His body surged with a strange light, and he suddenly accelerated his descent. It was not that this Protoss could forcibly accelerate against gravity, but countless feather-shaped energy appeared all over his body. These feathers were smooth and had no friction at all. They could even accelerate downward with the help of the airflow in the mission space. Quiet Angel stared straight at the back of the mortal players who were getting closer and closer. Her eyes flashed with determination. In terms of combat power, I, Quiet Angel, am indeed very weak, but this mission space is simply tailor-made for me. I never thought that I, who could be said to be a tragedy in the celestial realm, would have a day where I could make a comeback. As long as I can seize the throne of first place in this mission, when I return to the celestial realm, I can truly receive the protection of the Eight Directions Emperor, right? Chapter 1252. Although Quiet Angel was a Protoss, his fate was tragic. Since the day he was born, Quiet Angel had become a plaything for many powerful beings in the divine realm because of his handsome appearance. Ordinary handsomeness naturally could not enter the eyes of the gods, but Quiet Angel was one of the great angel clans in the divine realm. He was extremely beautiful. That was not all. Quiet Angel was a perfect holy angel that only appeared once in a billion years. His beauty was almost beyond the realm and no one below the God Emperor could resist him. That was not all. His perfect holy angel body had other drawbacks. His combat power was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. Even if he trained hard, he could only make his appearance more and more handsome without any improvement in his combat power. The results of his training were all uncontrollably reflected on his face. Even if the perfect holy angel body could change his appearance at will, his handsomeness did not diminish no matter how he or she changed. A man's wealth was his own ruin. The silent angel had a stunning appearance, but she didn't have the ability to defend herself. As a result, the pitiful silent angel had become the laughingstock of the divine realm. She had even caused several small-scale wars because of her. Although those wars could not enter the eyes of top existences like the God Emperors and God Emperors, they caused quite a stir among the ultimate gods. In the end, Quiet Angel changed hands several times and fell into the hands of the Divine Desire. He was often sent out by the Divine Desire to carry out various diplomatic activities. Originally, Quiet Angel thought that his fate would be an eternal tragedy without any hope, but this game gave him a new chance. In the game space his appearance had changed. He was no longer as handsome as before. He was still weak, but he no longer attracted attention. In addition, Quiet Angel had joined the 8 God Emperors from the very beginning. Although he was still in the lowest level C realm among the Protoss, the talent of the Angel clan had given him a unique advantage, a pair of wings. In addition, he finally had a clear gender and was no longer as indiscriminate as before. Unlike other Protoss who regarded this game as a mission imposed by the divine realm's origin, Quiet Angel was simply intoxicated. No matter what, I must firmly grasp this opportunity. I'm definitely going to get the first place in this game mission. The silent angel flapped his wings and performed a rather graceful backflip in the air. His downward momentum abruptly accelerated, while the frequency of his movements in the air also increased. Although Lu Fei and Chu Zijin were rather agile and good at all kinds of actions, they were far inferior to Silent Angel, the master of diplomacy who had experienced countless tragedies in the divine realm and was known as the #1 social butterfly in the endless divine realm. This fellow dived straight down like a butterfly through flowers. At the same time his body flashed and moved at an extremely fast speed. It was as if he was performing 3 sets of diving moves in a second. With a whooshing sound, he surpassed everyone and descended at an extremely fast speed. Chen Guang could only stare blankly. This bro probably practiced gymnastics in the endless god realm, right? Silent Angel, who was riding at the top of the pack, vaguely heard Qin Guang's complaints, but joy appeared on her face. Brother? It's been so many years, and even in the vast god realm, no one has ever called me brother, but this mortal actually, he recognizes my gender. Friend, although we're on opposing sides, it doesn't matter. Although I'm only a C rank now, after this mission space, I'll definitely be recognized by the 8 great emperors. Becoming a stronger B rank or even A rank expert is just around the corner. If I'm lucky enough to meet you again, I'll protect you. Although Silent Angel is charging at the front, we can't let our guard down. The entire mission might not only be based on the first place but also on everyone else. Let's speed up. Following the order of the 8 great emperors, the Protoss players finally ended their probing process and began to learn from Silent Angel's method of speeding down. Seeing this, Qin Guang's group of 3 who had been descending slowly, did not dare to be careless. Let's increase our speed appropriately, but make sure to act within your means, Chu Zijin said. I feel that you don't have to make do with just the 2 of us. This game mission doesn't seem to have any possibility of killing each other. You don't have to worry about our safety at all. Go do your own thing. Luffy nodded in agreement. That's right. Besides, the 2 of us are A rank. Even if the Protoss wants to go against us, they'll have to carefully consider whether they have the ability to do so. Qin Guang turned his head to look at the 8 great emperors who were passing by him and said, That's fine too, but you guys have to pay attention to that purple-clothed youth over there. He's an S-rank Protoss player. As for the other Protoss, there's nothing to fear. Alright, got it. Hurry up and go. Luffy urged impatiently. This was not the time for romance. Qin Guang carefully checked the strength of the Protoss team again. After confirming that the other 3 A-rank Protoss were weaker than Luffy and Chu Zijin in terms of strength, he boldly sped up and passed through the crowd. As long as he kept an eye on the 8 great emperors who posed the greatest threat to the 2 women, he really did not have to worry about their safety. Compared to the graceful posture of Silent Angel, when Qin Guang sped up, his movements did not look as elegant. He was like a tumbling cannonball. The first group, represented by Silent Angel, the 8 great emperors and Qin Guang, landed on the 5th island one after another. There was something strange about the 5th island. It was not a complete flat structure, but a crystal tower in the shape of a pointed cone. It looked beautiful, but in fact there were hidden dangers. For example, when jumping down, one might accidentally poke one's butt on the crystal tower's pointed cone. Otherwise, when landing on the edge of the crystal tower, one might not even have the time to stand on one's feet before sliding down. Even Qin Guang almost slipped when falling. Fortunately, he reacted in time and used his hands to act as suction cups. He stuck to the wall all the way and barely stopped at the edge of the crystal tower. With the situation on the 5th island, he could no longer test the gravity like before. As for the other players, most of the human players were lagging behind. Even Chu Zijin and Lu Fei had just jumped from the 4th island. Most of the others were still on the 3rd island or on the way to the 4th island from the 3rd island. As for the obliteration barrier, players who were on the way from the 2nd island to the 3rd island had already been disintegrated. As for those who had been jumping down, there was no need to panic for the time being. Silent Angel's landing posture was much better than Qin Guang's. She spread her wings and slowly descended, then paused for a moment to clearly see the position of the island below through the translucent crystal tower. Then she flapped her wings and continued on her way. The 8 great emperors landed almost at the same time as Qin Guang, but their posture was much more elegant. After all, he was a noble celestial. Even if he had to exhaust more divine power, he could not let himself be as inelegant as a mortal. After a short rest, the 8 great emperors looked curiously at Qin Guang, then snorted coldly and continued to jump down. Qin Guang was not in a hurry. Instead, he turned his head to look at the crystal tower beside him. Foolish Celestials, what do you know? According to the old man's many years of experience in online games, the other places were islands, but there was a crystal tower here. It was either a save point or something else. Not only did Qin Guang not jump down, but he also climbed up along the edge of the crystal tower. The triangular crystal tower looked somewhat familiar. It looked like a pyramid, and every angle was a perfect golden curve. When Qin Guang reached the center of the crystal tower at an extremely fast speed, the majority of the players finally caught up with his pace. Among them were 2 celestial players who deliberately stayed behind. Haha, what is this idiot doing? Strange, what is his purpose? What purpose could he have? Of course he is stupid. Not every player can be like us and always maintain a strong heart. He is just a mortal, and mortals have weaknesses. He has probably broken down and given up. The two celestials looked at Qin Guang and laughed, but Chu Zijin and Lu Fei, who had just landed, did not think so. Lu Fei looked up and down at Qin Guang. This guy is full of bad ideas. He must have found something. Chu Zijin did not answer her immediately. Instead, she imitated Qin Guang and looked around the triangular crystal tower. About half a minute later, Chu Zijin suddenly said loudly, "Sister Lu Fei, quickly go to the left." "I'll go to the right." "What's wrong?" Lu Fei looked puzzled. Chu Zijin looked carefully at the two of them, then lowered her voice and said, "Sister Lu Fei, look at our feet." Lu Fei looked down and saw countless equilateral triangles about 15 centimeters long under her feet. And then? This crystal tower is made up of countless perfect equilateral triangles. "Look at these triangular crystals?" As Chu Zijin said, she bent down to touch the crystal and continued, "You know that my ability is to control time, right? But I feel a power similar to time in these triangular crystals. It's the power of space." Seeing that Lu Fei was still puzzled, Chu Zijin said in a lower voice. Lu Fei finally understood. "You mean?" Chu Zijin nodded. "Yes, it must be like this. Qin Guang must have found out that this fifth island is a crystal tower. There must be a teleportation array. I can find out because of the resonance of time and space, but he doesn't have the time ability. I really don't know how he did it. Well, let's hurry up while the others haven't found out." After saying that, the two immediately split up and went to the other side of the crystal tower. Qin Guang, who had just walked to the center of the equilateral triangle, also saw the two women's actions. He could not help but scratch his head. They also found out? But Sister Lu Fei is also a gamer, so it's only right. As he muttered, Qin Guang jumped forward, his right foot stepping on the most central triangle of the crystal tower. A circle of light flashed, and at the same time, the electronic voice of the Holy Grail sounded in his mind. Congratulations to player Qin Guang for discovering the teleportation array. Directly arriving at the 10th floating island. Remaining number of uses of the teleportation array, 0. On the other side, Chu Zijin and Lu Fei, who were running to the edge, saw Qin Guang's figure disappear. They immediately broke into a run at an even faster speed. As for the two Protoss who were laughing at Qin Guang, they were dumbfounded. There's such a thing? Is this cheating? No, this should be the rules of the game mission. Damn humans, you only know how to exploit loopholes. The two B-class Protoss cursed as they quickly rushed to the place where Qin Guang disappeared. Of course they missed. Although they also found the teleportation array, it could only be used once and Qin Guang had already used it. No, this crystal tower has a total of 4 sides. The two Protoss did not dare to delay. They split up and rushed to the other 2 sides but still missed. They saw Chu Zijin and Lu Fei's figures disappear. Chapter 1253. What the hell? How can something like this happen? The two Protoss stomped their feet in different places and rushed toward the 4th side of the rhombus-shaped crystal tower. In the end they still missed. The two Protoss poked their heads out from both sides at the same time, only to see a mortal player falling from the sky and landing on the triangle in the middle. Then, the player looked around blankly and his figure quickly faded away. F***CK. There's a teleportation circle. Awesome. Just as he was about to disappear, the player finally recovered from the shock and cried out in surprise. The two Protoss were on the verge of collapse. What the F***CK? The two Protoss could only blame their bad luck. Originally, they could at least grab the 4th teleportation circle and send at least one person up. In the end, who would have thought that someone with a triangular wing would fall from the sky and land in this place? On the other side, Qin Guang's figure slowly appeared, and then he only felt a terrifying wave of heat hitting him in the face. He looked around and found that he was almost in a sea of fire. He was standing on a rock that had been burned red. This rock was surrounded by magma, and the magma sea that covered an area of about a kilometer was densely dotted with many rocky islands. Qin Guang was shocked in his heart. The 10th island was truly formidable. It looked like anyone who jumped down from it would fall into the magma if they weren't careful. Since he was directly transported over, he managed to avoid the most dangerous landing process. But how could he get to the next island? He looked around and found that he was at least 100 meters away from the edge of the magma sea. In this jumping world, due to the restrictions of the rules, he could not fly. It was useless even if he crazily transferred his power to his feet. Did this mean that he could only walk on the magma to get to the 10th island? While he was thinking, 2 rocky islands not far from him lit up almost at the same time. Sure enough, Lu Fei and Chu Zijin appeared at the same time. Qin Guang gave the two a thumbs up, and then the three of them looked at each other thinking about how to get out of this magma sea. Don't panic, let me test the temperature first. As a real man, Qin Guang was the first to take a step forward. He gathered his inner strength into his feet and lifted his leg, stepping on the magma. With a sizzling sound, the casual shoes on his feet were burned through on the spot. However, his cultivation was tyrannical, so he forcibly blocked the heat and continued to burn inside. Although it was still very hot, walking a few steps was not a problem. Qin Guang was about to warn the other two when he heard a rumbling sound. He looked back and saw Chu Zijin and Lu Fei sitting on a strange black machine almost at the same time. It looked a bit like a motorboat, but it could run on magma. The two girls sped all the way, leaving two trails of crimson flames in their wake. They managed to bypass Qin Guang and went straight to the edge of the magma sea. "You guys are," Chu Zijin joked. "Really, why are you in such a hurry?" The mall gave us a corresponding prop. "This motorboat is called Magma Runner, and it is for us to run on magma." Lu Fei also laughed. "Yes, it's really useful, but it's a little expensive. It costs 100 points. Qin Guang was really speechless for a long time. This jumping off the building was too playful. However, he was stubborn. How could he admit his failure? He put his hands on his hips. "Only the weak need to use this kind of tool. A strong person like me doesn't need these external things at all." Yan Bai walked forward with his head held high and his chest puffed out. Every time he landed on the ground, there would be a creaking sound. Needless to say, the inner strength in Seoul was quite useful. Although the temperature was still a little high after a long time, it felt like roasted duck feet on charcoal. However, with the help of his innate ability, it could quickly recover to its original state. The two girls knew his nature, so they no longer provoked him. They just grinned and rode the motorboat straight ahead. The three of them ran to the edge of the magma sea almost at the same time. There was a huge rock hanging out of the magma sea. Looking from here to both sides, they could see the magma pouring down like a waterfall, falling straight down, but it didn't fall far before the magma disappeared abruptly, as if there was an invisible basin below to catch it. About 300 meters down from here was the 11th island, which was actually a snow-covered snowfield. On the snowfield, there were countless glittering icicles. It's actually ice and fire. Let's try the gravity first. Chu Zijin almost spilled the beans. President Chu doesn't seem to be very pure. Lu Fei, who was next to her, immediately caught her sore spot. "How can that be? I don't even know what it means." "Don't pretend. Pure people look pure and they won't just say half of the words. You know the meaning in your heart, so you stopped halfway." On the other side, Qin Guang suddenly waved his hand with a serious expression. "Be serious, everyone. The gravity of the 10th island is strange. Just that light jump of his just now had brought him to a height of less than 2 meters, but he had felt at least 3 changes in gravity." Chu Zijin and Lu Fei hurriedly collected their thoughts and imitated him. Sure enough. At the moment of taking off, I felt a huge force at least 3 times the surface gravity. But when I reached the middle of the jump, it suddenly became very light, only about 1/20th of the surface gravity. The moment I reached the top, I felt like I was slammed to the ground by a huge force. This is close to 10 times the surface gravity. Chu Zijin analyzed it clearly. Lu Fei nodded. This means that the process of jumping from here to the ice island must have the same changes in gravity. Then it will be very difficult to completely follow the gift's instructions. In addition, if the frequency of the supergravity is too high, the force when landing will be very terrifying. The 3 of us can barely withstand it, but I'm afraid that E-rank players won't be able to escape. The discussion between the 3 of them was in full swing. After all, the fastest Protoss above them had probably only reached the 6th island. There was no need to be anxious. Sharpening the axe would not delay the work of cutting firewood. Guys, is the 10th island really that powerful?" As they were chatting, a timid voice suddenly came from behind them. The 3 of them were shocked. Turning around, they saw a young man standing behind them. Qin Guang's hair stood on end. With his abilities, someone could actually sneak up behind him? Qin Guang looked at him with a guarded expression. "You must be a monster. How did you sneak over here?" The young man was at a loss. "I don't know why either. Just now, when I jumped to the 5th island, I didn't understand what happened. Then I said I found a teleportation array. When I came to my senses, I was already standing here." Qin Guang suddenly understood. It was not strange that he had been teleported here. Speaking of which, this guy's luck was too good. Not only had he landed on the teleportation array, he had even managed to avoid the magma sea after reaching the 10th island. His luck was at least S rank. "That's right. I have high hopes for you. With your luck, You will definitely become a great person in the future. Alright, young man, you can do it. We will go down first. After saying that, Qin Guang jumped down first. The fluctuating gravity was very scary, but he could not give up just because it was difficult. Lu Fei and Chu Zijin also followed closely behind. This guy with S-rank luck first considered for a few seconds. Then he clenched his teeth and upgraded to D rank on the spot. Then he closed his eyes and jumped down like Qin Guang and the other two. Qin Guang and the other two, who were flying in the air, could only watch as this guy howled miserably as he was swept down by the wildly fluctuating gravity. It turned out that halfway from the 10th island to the 11th island, not only would there be changes in the angle of gravity, but there would also be differences in the vertical position. This guy with S-rank luck seemed to have used up all his luck just now. When he jumped down, he encountered a gravitational whirlpool. He was howling miserably. That poisonous milk of yours just now really hurt him. Lu Fei chuckled and teased. Qin Guang could only express his heartache. How can this be called poisonous milk? Luck is also a part of one's strength. I really have high hopes for this guy. Although he is only E rank, the rewards in this jumping off building world are very generous. It should not be a problem for him to rise to D rank. If he thinks of something, he should be able to land on the 11th island smoothly. This is a very professional judgment of mine. Alright. You're a professional, but now he's dead. If he's dead, then so be it. Hopefully he will still have a chance to prove himself after being reset. At this time, the Protoss who were lagging behind were also at a loss. Silent Angel, who had rushed to the front, thought that he had already left everyone in the dust. As the first contestant in the lead, he had received a notification from the Cup World. However, he did not expect that he would fall behind for no reason. It was simply unreasonable. Qin Guang and the other two used the teleportation formation that could be considered a bug and instantly overtook everyone else. They no longer held back and increased their speed as they went down layer by layer. During this period, the three of them had used various techniques to find the mechanisms of different floating islands, such as teleportation formations, acceleration umbrellas, and various other strange tools. After passing through the 30th island, the difficulty of the mission continued to increase. Not only did all the floating islands become mobile, but the gravitational conditions became even more extreme. In addition, when the players were flying, various projection walls would continuously appear, requiring the players to completely follow the posture of the projection when flying over a certain surface. Otherwise, they would directly crash into the projection. Qin Guang had even personally tested the strength of the projection walls. If one did not have a physical body realm of a rank or above, they would instantly shatter into pieces if they crashed into it. These various situations caused the elimination rate of the players to increase sharply. However, the good thing was that the rewards were generous. Performing a perfect move would earn them 10 reward points, which was even more than many players who had participated several times in the past. Of course, performing a perfect move was very difficult for E-rank players. However, there would always be people who were extremely lucky or had heaven-defying talent. They would always be able to perform a perfect move once. Otherwise, they would be like the young man that Qin Guang and the other two had encountered who had run into the teleportation formation. When Qin Guang and the other two stopped on the 50th island, the fastest players behind them had only reached the 40th island. However, there were no E-rank players who had survived until now. All the players had completed the process of advancing from E rank to D rank. Chapter 1254. At this time, Qin Guang was on the 50th island, but his face was full of confusion. He realized that he was wrong. At first, he thought that this jump off the building was in the shape of a standard straight tube, with a diameter of 10 kilometers from top to bottom. Jumping down from above, along the way were all small floating islands, the largest of which was no more than 2 kilometers in diameter. The edge of the floating island abyss in the distance could also be clearly seen with the naked eye, but when the three of them jumped onto the 50th island, everything changed. Moreover, this change came without warning, without any buffer in between. The moment he landed, he realized that the 50th island was completely different from the floating island before. Qin Guang was at a loss, and Chu Zijin and Lu Fei were not much better. Lu Fei was like Granny Lu, who had accidentally barged into the Grand View Garden, standing beside Qin Guang and looking around from top to bottom. What is this place? Why did it suddenly become so big? So spacious and bright? Chu Zijin frowned. How is this an island? This is clearly a boundless continent. If this is the case, how can we reach the edge before the obliteration barrier descends? Lu Fei also realized this problem. No, little Chu, look at the edge of the glass barrier in the distance. This continent has no edge at all, right? The two girls looked up into the distance. Only God knew how far the transparent wall at the edge was. It was almost beyond the limits of their vision and distance, but they could still see it. There was only one explanation for this. This transparent wall was too tall, so tall that it was beyond the comprehension of others. Looking at it from afar, it even gave people the feeling that it was like a starry sky. Chu Zijin closed her eyes, and a sparkling and transparent crystal hourglass appeared in her palm. She activated her A-rank time ability. After a long time, she said, "The light reflected from the distant glass wall took at least more than 30 seconds to reach us. This means that the size of this continent is definitely more than 10 million kilometers." Lu Fei said in surprise, "Your time ability can also be used to measure distance?" Chu Zijin sighed. "Of course not. After all, who would use the speed of light to measure distance? It's just that this transparent wall is too far away from us, so much so that I can even capture the time revealed by the light. If it's so far away, it's impossible for us to jump down before the obliteration barrier arrives." Lu Fei also sighed, then looked up and exclaimed, Strange, the sky that looked like a starry sky is gone." Chu Zijin replied, "That seems to be the case. In other words, this 50th island is an independent plane?" The memories of being players gradually surfaced in their minds, and Chu Zijin and Lu Fei slowly adapted to the concept of planes. Lu Fei suddenly thought of something. "Right, why hasn't this kid said anything yet? Is he pretending to be deep? Even if the two of us spend half a year guessing here, we might not even be as good as one word from this fellow." The two of them turned to look at Qin Guang at the same time, only to see that he was very agitated. Qin Guang sighed. "You're right. This place has indeed become a world of its own. We probably don't have to worry about the barrier because this place can be understood as the middle station of the entire jumping world. We should be able to rest here for a while." "From your tone, it seems like you're very familiar with this place?" Lu Fei, who knew Qin Guang very well, immediately discovered the abnormality in his tone. Qin Guang nodded helplessly. "That's quite familiar." Qin Guang stood side by side with the two women on a boulder at the summit of the mountain. He gazed into the distance. In the direction of the transparent wall that Lu Fei and Chu Zijin had mentioned, the mountains, rivers, and veins of the earth were extending upwards in a very orderly manner. This unique tilted landscape, this world of tilted slabs, where one couldn't see the edge from the bottom to the top. How could he not be familiar with this place? In any case, he had lived here for more than 100,000 years. Even if you beat him to death, he wouldn't have thought that he would return to the realm of true martial in such a way. This had happened too suddenly, and he had been completely unprepared. So here came the problem. He had jumped off the building and jumped into the realm of true martial. However, now wasn't the time to catch up with his old acquaintances on this continent. There were at least dozens of people chasing after him, and they wanted to rush to the front. In addition, Qin Guang had lived a long life in the realm of true martial. His old acquaintances from the time he had first arrived here had already turned into bones. Only God knew how many times they had reincarnated. So, even if he stood in front of them again, he might not recognize them. In addition, Qin Guang had become a martial sage in the realm of true martial. He was known as the realm of true martial Holy Emperor. His position was even higher. He could decide the life and death of hundreds of millions of people with just a word. So, he didn't have many friends that he could talk to. "Hey, the task prompt has come. It says that this place is called True Martial Island. It asks us to find a place called True Martial Holy Emperor City on this island. Then we can get the approval of the residents of True Martial Holy Emperor City. Then we can enter the former residence of the Holy Emperor City's City Lord. There is an old well in the former residence. We can jump from the old well and enter the next island. Oh, by the way, it says that there are a total of 9 True Martial Holy Emperor cities on True Martial Island. They are located at different heights. If we can jump from the highest True Martial Holy Emperor City, we can directly jump over the 9 floating islands and land on the 59th island." Qin Guang was about to say that this was the realm of true martial. However, he didn't expect that the task prompt would appear in the form of a task card in the minds of the 3 people. He also covered his face. "Forget it. My poor realm of true martial has been forcibly demoted to realm of true martial. Is your family a die house owner? Are you a cosmic gigantism sufferer? Have you ever seen such a big island? Besides, isn't realm of true martial Holy Emperor City the home of the old man?" There is a small line of words at the bottom of the task prompt. It says that the residents of realm of true martial Holy Emperor City are very strong. The weakest of them is a C rank. The city guards even have A rank strength. The 13 captains of the city guards have terrifying S rank strength. The Lord is S rank. This is only the middle level of realm of true martial Holy Emperor City. If it is the 9th level of Saint Emperor City, the ordinary residents have A rank strength. The stronger ones have S rank strength or even beyond S rank strength. Chu Zijin cried out in alarm again. Qin Guang clenched his fists slightly. He felt the vast internal strength in his body growing crazily because of the continuous absorption of yin and yang qi. This was the reason. Considering the strength of the natives of the realm of true martial, saying that they were S rank would be underestimating the captains. When he was still in the realm of true martial, the realm of true martial was built on the 9th level of Saint Emperor City. His deputies were all martial emperors. The stronger members of the city guards were all martial emperors. Although the classification of abilities in the Jinwu continent was somewhat different from that of the players in the game, it wasn't wrong to call them Super S rank. For example, now that he had recovered all his strength, if he returned to the martial sage realm, he would be a Super S class. Lu Fei felt uneasy and said, "Why don't we choose a Saint Emperor City that's in the middle? But this place is so big, how are we going to find him? With our current abilities, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for us to obtain the approval of the natives here, right?" Qin Guang waved his hand casually. "Now I know the way. Follow me. We'll go straight to the 9th floor, the strongest true martial Holy Emperor City. Why don't we split up? I'm afraid we'll slow you down." Chu Zijin hesitated. However, Qin Guang laughed out loud. With a wave of his hand, a burst of energy shot out from his palm and flew straight towards the forest at the bottom of the 300-meter cliff. Following the loud explosion, under the dumbfounded gazes of Chu Zijin and Lu Fei, the forest below was forcefully razed to the ground. After the trees fell, the bare ground extended outwards, forming an empty space that was more than 500 meters wide and more than 10 kilometers long. "Are you on drugs?" Lu Fei exclaimed. She had always known that Qin Guang was powerful, but this was way too powerful. Was this still a palm from a human? Did you just shoot out a directional neutron cannon with a single slap? Qin Guang waved his hand proudly. "Don't panic. I've already said that this is my territory. The me on True Martial Island is the real me. I forgot to tell you that True Martial Holy Emperor City was built by me. Me is True Martial Holy Emperor. Therefore we can boldly walk into True Martial Holy Emperor City. No one will say anything." This. Chu Zijin and Lu Fei stared at him. They felt that he was bragging, but he was not that kind of person. "Why are you looking at me like that? I'm serious. Are you sure that the people inside know you? Do they know who you are now?" Qin Guang was stunned at first, but then he waved his hand indifferently. When one's strength reaches a certain level, appearance is irrelevant. What matters is strength. After all, there has only been one martial sage on this huge true martial island. It's not anyone else, it's me. Alright, you win. You can be cocky. Let's go. Hurry up. Luffy gave him a push from behind, and the three of them set off just like that. Qin Guang wasn't worried about the fact that he was gone. It didn't matter how many years he had been gone or how many batches of people had changed in the true martial Holy Emperor City. As long as he was still a martial sage, he would naturally be the master of the true martial Holy Emperor City. Not long after arriving here, he had recovered 50% of his strength. Although the recovery would slow down as his strength increased, it would not be a problem as long as he was sure that he could recover to his peak state. However, there was one thing he did not understand. Millions of human players had arrived in 150,000 different mission spaces. They could not duplicate 150,000 true martial islands at once, could they? The Heavenly Holy Grail did not have the power to do so. However, it did not take long for him to get the answer to his question. This was because the three of them encountered other players as they hurried on their way. The fastest player in this mission space had only reached about 30 islands. Of course, the three of them could only encounter other players in other mission spaces. This meant that regardless of which mission space they were in, the moment they landed on True Martial Island, all the players were suddenly pulled to the same big map. This was a team of 4 Protoss. They were all elites and all of them were God Emperors. Although there weren't any super experts like Ba Feng or Yu Ting among the 5 God Emperors, the formation of 5 God Emperors was still rather exaggerated. That was why they were able to catch up to Qin Guang's trio. Previously at the Crystal Tower, these 4 gods must have snatched the rights to use all the teleportation portals. In addition, they seem to be very unfriendly to human players. Chapter 1255. The Peach Blossom Divine Emperor, also known as Peach Blossom, was a fairy born from the blooming nightmare peach blossom, and belonged to the fairy race. However, because of the nightmare peach blossom's innate ability, Peach Blossom had some characteristics of the plant race. She was the only female among the 4 divine emperors. She had a charming posture, radiant cheeks, and a pair of seductive peach blossom eyes. In terms of strength, the Peach Blossom Divine Emperor did not rank high in the endless divine realm. However, in terms of appearance, Peach Blossom could be said to be the best in the endless divine realm. Even the gods could easily fall for her peach blossom dress. Only the main gods who wholeheartedly pursued greater power, transcended the ordinary rules, reached the origin of the rules, and fused half of their bodies and half of their divine souls into the boundless god realm could completely ignore her charms. Different from divine emperors, once a overgod became a overgod, although they would possess power that surpassed the gods, their original character would be affected by too much power. Regardless of whether this overgod was arrogant or humble, irritable or stubborn before becoming a overgod, they would become transcendent after becoming a overgod. That's right, it was incomparably transcendent. Most of their lives, they would actively fuse their bodies and souls into the endless divine realm, allowing themselves to become a part of the endless divine realm. At the same time, they would also be closer to the origin of the endless divine realm. This transcendent came from the desire for power, and this desire came from the instincts of the souls of all living beings in the endless divine realm. No matter what kind of life, as long as they had intelligence or even their own consciousness, they could not escape from this instinct. This was also the fundamental reason why the relationship between Colored and her father, the overgod of chaos, was so cold. Otherwise, the overgod of chaos would not have been unaware that Colored had fallen into the heavenly Holy Grail for so many years. If the will of the overgod of chaos was to be touched, it would probably only be when Colored died. Only then could it cause a slight ripple in the will of the overgod of chaos. As for why Peach Blossom had so many fans in the immortal realm, her beautiful appearance was only the surface reason. The deeper reason was that her appearance had already reached a level close to the rules. Getting close to her, looking at her at such a close distance, could even unconsciously obtain greater power. She had many fans in the endless god realm, and the 3 god emperors around her were the best of the best. They were Wind Shadow, Frost, and Green Wood. These 4 gods were originally gathered together in the endless divine realm, and could be considered as a major force that dominated an area. After accumulating their strength a few times before this mission, the 4 gods simply looted 4-party contracts before entering the mission space, and immediately formed a party. When the game mission had just begun, the 4 gods had already massacred all the human players in their respective missions. However, even though there were no more competitors, the 4 gods had set their sights on the champion seat of the 150,000 mission spaces from the very beginning. They rushed down without stopping and even found one more mechanism than Qingguang and the other 2, arriving before Qingguang and the other 2. Peach, it seems I was right. Since Marshall Island is so large, it's very likely that all the players are gathered here. These 3 people came from another quest space, Shifeng said. Frost God Emperor stood at the intersection, his body covered in frost. Even his eyebrows were completely frozen, and he said expressionlessly. As he spoke, his eyes were fixed on Peach's face, but everyone knew that he was talking about Qingguang and the other 2. 3 humans. Not bad but useless. It was the same for Wind Shadow Deity Emperor, who had his arms crossed. As for Green Wood, who had a head full of green hair and long eyebrows that looked like ancient vines that dragged down from his cheeks, he did not say a word. He only stared coldly at Qingguang and the other 2. As he breathed, the trees on both sides of the road swayed as if they were breathing. At this time there was an endless forest beside the road. Among the 4 gods, Greenwood was the strongest. Peach frowned and glanced at the 3. Anyway, they're useless humans. Just kill them. After saying that, she waved her hand impatiently, as if looking at them would pollute her eyes. Qingguang wanted to laugh. The lineup of 4 god emperors looked very luxurious. But sorry, this is the realm of true martial within the heavenly grail. Perhaps you guys are very strong in the endless divine world, and can even destroy countless planes with a single palm. Sorry, this is the heavenly grail. Here your abilities are limited. But here this holy land is like a fish in the sea, a bird in the sky. In this situation, the 4 of you together are not even enough to crush me with one hand. Frost God Emperor did not know that danger was approaching. He still walked forward with an indifferent expression. White mist rose from his slightly raised right hand, and his entire palm gradually became transparent, turning into an ice crystal state. Although Chu Zijin and Lu Fei knew that the current Qinguang was very strong, they were still somewhat nervous. The two girls clenched their fists tightly. But they were not at a loss. Instead, they carefully observed the situation. At the same time, they were thinking about how they could fully display the strength of an A-class and not be a burden to him. Wait a moment, I have a question. Qinguang raised his hand and asked, "Why are you still talking nonsense when you are about to die?" Although Han Shuang looked like a man of few words, he was actually quite truthful. "I feel that there is no need for you guys to fight me to the death. Wouldn't it be better for us to each go our separate ways?" Qinguang still had a harmless look on his face. Wind Shadow Deity Emperor, who was standing behind Han Shuang, laughed. "You, this mortal, are quite interesting. However, many people have already said the same thing before. But ants will always be ants. If I say that you are blocking our way, do you understand?" "Oh, I understand." Qinguang moved his body to the side. "Then I will make way for you guys." Wind Shadow God Emperor's face paled. "You?" Evidently, Qinguang's unconventional attitude made Wind Shadow God Emperor feel that he had been made a fool of. Peach became impatient. "You really talk too much. Hurry up and kill them. There are a total of hundreds of thousands of mission spaces. Although we have cleared out all the human players, it is hard to guarantee that there will not be any abnormalities among the millions of human players." Hearing this, Frost God Emperor suddenly moved. "That's true. Why do we need to talk nonsense with the dead?" As he spoke, he pounced forward and waved his arm. Along with his movement, a cold current shot out from his palm and swept over like a broom. This cold current expanded to a length of several tens of feet in an instant. It was even more powerful, as if it was going to freeze the air. "I will use my time ability to freeze his ice wind first." Chu Zijin, who was standing behind Qinguang, finally spoke. Qinguang waved his hand calmly. "No need. Don't move. They don't know how scary true martial holy emperor is here." As he finished speaking, he took a step forward and raised his right fist. On his fist was a ball of crimson flame. "Fire attribute ability user?" Frost raised her eyebrows slightly. Qinguang grinned. "Wrong. This is just one of the 400,000 absolute arts that the old man has mastered, Great Sun God Fist." Saying so, he blasted out a punch. As his fist moved forward, an orange-yellow beam of light with a diameter of 3 feet whizzed out with a terrifying high temperature. It was really like a scorching sun in the sky. Chapter 1256. The beam of light blasted out by the Great Sun Divine Fist collided with the cold current unleashed by the Frost God Emperor with a roaring flame, but surprisingly, there was no sound. The cold current that could freeze everything did not cause any ripples in the face of the beam of light. It was like snow melting under the sun. That was not the end. After swallowing the cold current, the terrifying heat current rushed toward the 4 God Emperors. Peach, Wind Shadow, and Greenwood Gods, who were waiting for Frost to kill Qinguang and the others with a slap, were dumbfounded. It was not that they were careless. Every God Emperor in the endless celestial realm was an outstanding powerhouse. Even Azure, a descendant of the Lord God who was born with a unique advantage, still had to grow from a weak person to a strong person. Therefore, although the 4 God Emperors looked young, they were all experienced people who had killed their way out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. The reason why they were dumbfounded was that, based on their years of experience as God Emperors, although the 3 humans looked much stronger than the ordinary human players they had met before, they were still no match for them. In particular, Qinguang was not even worth mentioning in the eyes of the 4 God Emperors. The other 2 women had auras that made them slightly afraid, but this man was just a talker. He did not have any aura at all. However, as soon as the 2 sides attacked, what they saw completely overturned the common sense of the 4 God Emperors. What he had displayed was simply overwhelming power. The 4 God Emperors could not believe their eyes. Although this was not the celestial realm but the game space, and it was not their real bodies that had come here, but only a wisp of divine sense, their understanding of the rules and judgment of power had not weakened. However, they had misjudged this man. There was only one explanation for this. In this world, this man's power had already completely surpassed the S-class players like them. Seeing that the situation was not good, Wind Shadow God Emperor quickly used his ability and turned into a whirlwind, leading the other 2 God Emperors to dodge Qinguang's fiery punch. The Divine Emperor of Frost, who was the closest, reacted a little slower and was slightly grazed by the beam of flames. When he reappeared on the other side, his right shoulder was melted straight away, leaving a gash. A layer of icy mist emerged, and the Divine Frost Emperor's melted shoulders slowly regained its shape. At this moment, among the four gods, Wind Shadow Deity Emperor seemed to be in the worst condition. His face was completely red and smoke was coming out of his body as though he had been cooked. After he transformed into a whirlwind, he came into direct contact with the blazing pillar of light from the great sun god Fist. Even though it was only for an instant, it still turned his whirlwind into a heat wave. Why is it so terrifying? Who are you? In the distance, Tao Tan looked at Qin Guang with fear, her face as cold as frost. This time it was Qin Guang's turn to be surprised. You haven't heard of me? The Frost Divine Emperor's face was already very pale. Now that she was severely injured, her face turned even paler. She glared at Qin Guang and asked, "Are you Dang Wu?" Qin Guang chuckled. "That's not wrong. But in this place I'm not in the middle of the day." Peach Blossom Divine Emperor frowned. "What do you mean?" Qin Guang waved his hand indifferently. "Nothing. Just now, you said that you cleared out the human players who were on the same mission as you? They're just weaklings who can't even withstand a single blow. So what if we kill them? Alright, you guys can't even withstand a single blow in my eyes, so I can kill you." After confirming this matter, Qin Guang decided not to hold back anymore. He was not crazy enough to kill the god race. For example, he did not attack the 8-direction Divine Emperors before. After all, the 8-direction Divine Emperors were restraining their subordinates. However, towards these four gods, Qin Guang did not have such a good temper. "Don't be so arrogant. We don't deny that you're very strong, but don't think that we can't do anything to you." Divine Emperor Greenwood finally stood up. At the same time he circulated his divine power. The fertile land around them trembled, and the dense forest trembled. Green light rose up from the forest and rushed into the sky before gathering above Divine Emperor Greenwood's head. As the wood energy entered his body, Divine Emperor Greenwood's body rapidly grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. "Even if I can only use a billionth of my power here, you still can't kill me. No one can defeat me in the forest." Seeing that her capable assistant was preparing to go all out, Peach smiled charmingly. "That's right. In the end you're just a mortal. You don't understand the power of a god." As she spoke, her body swayed at an extremely mysterious frequency. Wind, Shadow and Frost, the two divine emperors, were dazzled. However, their absent-mindedness did not weaken their combat power. Instead, the injuries they had received previously quickly recovered. Qin Guang did not understand. "Why are you shaking and twisting? How easily are you satisfied? You can recover on the spot just by looking at a beautiful woman?" "I'm not boasting, but with the beauty of the peach blossom eyes Divine Emperor, the old man has hidden many beauties. Any one of them would not lose to anyone." He completely did not understand the deeper meaning of the Peach Blossom Divine Emperor's actions. Peach Blossom's appearance was originally compatible with the rules. That simple action was a consummate skill that she had honed for countless years. It could make the rule power in her body even purer, and it could have a healing effect on others. On the other side, Divine Emperor Greenwood had already transformed into a giant tree ant that was 100 feet tall. His entire body was covered in a dazzling green armor. In an instant, he had gathered the energy of countless giant trees in the surrounding 1,000 miles of fertile land into his body. "You guys seem very confident, but that's useless. Also, you casually took other people's things without asking for my permission. You blockhead, you really don't know how to be polite. So die for me." Qin Guang suddenly moved. His feet stomped heavily on the ground. At that moment his body was not very tall, but it was as heavy as a group of mountains. This stomp felt like an earthquake. In the next instant, he appeared in front of Divine Emperor Greenwood and heavily punched the center of the giant trent's body. When he punched, everyone felt as if the sky was falling and the earth was collapsing. The dust in a radius of several thousand kilometers seemed to disappear, and the ground caved in by several meters. Countless soil appeared in front of him and gathered in front of his right hand. He forcefully compressed it into a stone palm that was less than half a meter wide, and he punched Divine Emperor Greenwood's chest. Divine Emperor Greenwood did not even have the chance to scream before he collapsed. The tree essence that had just gathered on his body quickly dispersed again. With just one palm, this insufferably arrogant Divine Emperor was suppressed on the spot, and he could not be more dead. Peach Blossom, Han Shuang and Wind Shadow could not understand at all. Wasn't he a fire element ability user? Why did this punch contain the power of the earth? Qin Guang waved his hand, and the stone palm that still had not cracked turned into a mass of extremely solidified quicksand that rushed toward the remaining three gods. "Do you want to know the answer?" because this is the realm of true martial, and I am the true martial holy emperor. The true martial holy emperor city that you are going to is the old man's lair. Do you understand? In this world I am the heavens. I am the emperor. I dominate everything. Your divine techniques and divine powers that are merely borrowed from external objects are nothing. Chapter 1257. At this moment, Qin Guang's palm strike was close to the Tao. Even in the endless divine realm, it would be beyond the scope of a mortal god. At the very least, one would need to be a divine general to be able to use it. With the strength of the four divine true bodies, Qin Guang's Tao unification palm strike was nothing more than a grain of light. It wouldn't even be worth raising an eyelid. In fact, the power released by the four divine true bodies in the endless divine realm could completely destroy the entire realm of true martial in the blink of an eye, let alone this super heavy palm strike condensed from 1,000 li of dust. However, at this time, on this true martial island, in this game plane constructed by the heavenly Holy Grail, it didn't matter how strong they were in the divine realm. Here they could only accept the heavenly Holy Grail's evaluation and could only display S-rank strength. Although there was a difference in strength among the S-class experts, even the strongest S-class expert couldn't be Qin Guang's opponent. Not to mention that Qin Guang was currently in the true martial world, which was filled with yin and yang energy. Why is this happening? Even though the three divine emperors saw Qin Guang's movement, and even though their divine sense images had easily retreated far away, their bodies couldn't react in time. In the blink of an eye, the three divine emperors were fiercely pressed to the ground by Qin Guang. Each of their bodies was covered with a thin layer of dust, but they weighed more than 1,000 li. The dust that Qin Guang had forcefully compressed seemed loose, but it had actually melted the soil of 1,000 li. Even though it wasn't as heavy as a black hole, it was still as heavy as a white dwarf star. Damn you, let us go. Do you know what kind of existences you are provoking? We are only projecting our thoughts here. If our real bodies were here, we would only need a finger to crush you 1,000,000 times over. Celestial Emperor Tao Si, who had always been calm and arrogant, finally panicked and threatened with a shrill voice. Qin Guang walked in front of the three divine emperors and looked down at them. Of course I know that your real bodies are very terrifying, and I also know that you are divine emperors. But so what? In this place I call the shots. As he spoke, the corpse of divine Emperor Greenwood, who had died in his hands, gradually disintegrated and turned into origin energy. Not only that, but a stream of colorful light surged out of divine Emperor Greenwood's corpse and flowed toward Qin Guang. Qin Guang didn't have the right to refuse at all. The light rushed straight into his head, and he could only watch helplessly. But strangely, he didn't feel anything at all, as if it was an illusion. Although he didn't know what this thing contained, this smell was very familiar. It was very similar to the situation he had encountered in the slaughtering world. Qin Guang's intuition told him that this was definitely not a bad thing. That was because he was feeling very strange at this moment. He clearly didn't feel anything, but there was an inexplicable strong sense of joy and satisfaction in the depths of his heart. It was as if there was a little bug living in his heart, and also as if there was a voice in his subconscious that was shouting and roaring, frantically telling him that he must obtain more of this thing. Things that were beneficial were more motivating. Qin Guang's gaze towards the three divine emperors changed. It was like a gourmet looking at a Michelin star restaurant. Divine Emperor Han Shuang saw that the situation wasn't good and shouted, "Dangwu, since you know who we are, you should know that even if our projections die in your hands, our real bodies in the God realm won't be touched. Have you thought about the consequences of this?" Tao Si also glared angrily and said, "That's right, if you slaughter the four of us here, we won't let you off easily. When we return to the God realm, we will issue a bounty for you. Anyone who can kill you in this game will gain the friendship of the four divine emperors. They will become our most important distinguished guests. We will even take out a real supreme artifact as a reward. At that time, you will become the enemy of all the divine emperors." Divine Emperor Fengying also said, "If you are willing to let us go, then we can pretend that the matter with Greenwood never happened. No matter how strong you are just a mortal. How can you deal with the anger of the entire God realm? You don't know how many gods in the endless God realm are queuing up to enter the game. There are many divine emperors who are stronger than us." Qin Guang shrugged, "You talk too much nonsense. Even divine Emperor Yu Ting doesn't dare to talk to me like this, let alone you." After saying that, Qin Guang slowly raised his palm. Yellow sand appeared in his palm like a small sandstorm was brewing. There were also countless invisible threads connected to the yellow sand that suppressed the three divine emperors. Apart from that, Qin Guang also noticed that the three gods didn't seem to be able to see the multicolored light that surged out from the dead Greenwood Divine Emperor. Otherwise they should be able to guess why he suddenly revealed such a strong killing intent. These existences who could be said to live at the top of the pyramid in the endless god realm were like delicious food in his eyes. Even if he told others, he probably wouldn't believe it. Qin Guang gritted his teeth and clenched his palm into a fist. The yellow sand pressing down on the three divine emperors fiercely pressed down on them. The eyes of the three peached the arch-gods suddenly widened. They never thought that after saying so much it would be useless. This guy had no intention of negotiating at all. You will definitely regret this. After saying that, the game of the four divine emperors, led by Peach the Arch, came to an end. Across the infinitely distant plain barrier, the famous four divine temples in the endless god realm let out a series of loud noises. In an instant, the giant palace complex that floated tens of thousands of miles high in the sky, with an area of more than 900 million square kilometers, suddenly shattered, then turned into countless crystal-clear fragments that fell from the sky. These palace fragments were all residences of the various gods of the four divine temples. After being soaked in divine power for so many years, even a piece of broken tile would be filled with divine power and comprehension of laws. In the hands of existences below the god-king level, such as divine generals, it would become a family heirloom that was worth hiding in the depths of the treasury. The energy contained within could even allow an ordinary mortal god to cultivate to the level of a divine general. They would only be a step away from becoming a ruler. This unforeseen event happened too suddenly. The servants of the four divine temples, some divine lords, godly venerables, and divine kings had not yet recovered from the sudden change when the angry roar of the four divine emperors rang in their hearts. Send down my order. We four divine emperors are willing to take out the Saint catalog and place a bounty on a human player called Noon in the origin game. Anyone who can kill this person in the game will be able to see the Peach the Arch divine emperors face up close for 10,000 years. When these two bounties were announced, the god realm was shaken. The Saint catalog was a reward from the Saint Lord God that the four divine temples obtained. Even just getting close to it would allow one to receive an incredible infusion of divine power, let alone seeing the Peach the Arch divine emperor up close for 10,000 years. The last person to receive such benefits was the Wind Shadow divine emperor. Before this, he was just a godly venerable who had been chased by a divine lord. On the other side, feeling the anger of the four divine emperors before their deaths, Lu Fei said worriedly, "It seems like you've poked a hornet's nest?" Qin Guang laughed indifferently. "What a joke, I'm the hornet's nest here." After saying that, he quietly licked his lips. He did not know what was going on, but absorbing the colorful flowing light that surged out from the divine emperors really made him feel good. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.